我和 Eric 两个一起来跟大家讲。那 Eric 今天早晨是从这个 Western 特意为我们这个讲座赶过来啊，但是在401上他说有一个事故，有一点点堵车，所以大概他可能晚个10几分钟到哈啊。那反正我就先开始啊，估计肯定是我讲不完他就应该能到，所以呢我们就先开始。通常来讲呢，我们在讲，今天我们主要是讲加拿大啊，我们主要是讲加拿大。但如果大家对美国的 program 有兴趣的话，我们可以聊一下。我们对美国的 program 也蛮熟，所以在讲到加拿大的 undergraduate 的 program 的时候，就是我们的本科申请的时候呢，基本上来讲呢，现在有4大类本科的专业非常受欢迎。那我说的是4大类哈，不是4个专业，是4大类。那为什么他们受欢迎？其实原因很简单，就是因为将来的就业市场需求更加的广阔。然后呢，大家很关心，或者有时候孩子们自己也很关心的，就是我这个工资水平比较高一点啊，所以大概就是4大类。第一大类是 engineering。第2大类是 medical，我们叫 biomedical。第3大类是 social science 和 law。那第4大类是 business related。我分别说一下啊。为什么说它是大类？它并不是一个专业啊。那像在 engineering 里面，基本上它有很多很多专业，所以大家看到的这个地方，计算机 computer software engineering， 这是一个专业。当然，滑铁卢把它分成2个专业，滑铁卢有 computer engineering， 同时也有 software engineering。然后第2，大家所有人都知道的叫 computer science。然后 double E 很多人也都知道，electric 和 electronics。然后 nanotechnology 这个现在也是最近这几年蛮受欢迎的一个行业，叫什么纳米科技。然后mechanical 机械工程。当然，机械工程里面，滑铁卢它有另外一个专业叫 mechatronics， 就是机械电子工程，更多的是跟我们现在的这个大家都很火热的这个机器人 AI 是相关，因为它有一部分是机械的。你看这个机器人，它有一部分是机械部分，当然它有很多部分是电子控制。Civil engineering 我们国内管这个应该叫土木工程。再下来 architecture， 再下来 environmental。最近这2年其实环境工程蛮热门的，知道最近这个气候好像是大家都能感受到一些气候的一些变化。那 biomedical 就是我们所谓的这个医学院相关，当然它不是真正的进入到医学院，因为大家知道医学院都是 graduate， 叫研究生阶段。那我们在本科生阶段呢，其实你为了将来我能够从事医生或者相关的这种行业，你需要在本科做很多准备工作。那相关跟这个医学院最相关的，像 health science， 有的学校叫 life science， 你知道 ，Western 就叫 life science， 像 McMaster 它有 health science， 它也有 life science， 它2个都有。然后滑铁卢大学有 biomedical， 叫生物医学专业，有的学校叫 chemical， 然后还有很多叫 public health， 这个就公众医学了。你比如说，对我们最近这几年影响最大的这个 COVID， 在很多它是 public health 这个领域，公共医学包括防疫啊等等这些。kinesiology 是运动医学，这个也是我们加拿大很多学校受欢迎的一个。所以这个就是一大类，这一大类就是跟医科跟生物相关的，我们把它归到一大类。第3个比较受欢迎的一个专业呢，就是 social science 和 law。我们有很多孩子或者家长很希望自己的孩子将来能够当律师，将来能够从事法律专业。当然，我们也知道法律专业它有 law school， 所以它也是在 graduate 那个 level。 那你在 undergraduate 的时候，你需要去做哪些工作，去能够为你自己更好的准备，将来你能够进到 law school，进到 graduate 这些 program 里面呢？基本上有这几大类。一个呢是 economics，当然有的人把 economics 归到 business 那边也可以了，因为它有好多东西其实是交叉的。我们这个我们就把它现在放在这儿啊，放到 social science 里面，就是经济学。其实经济学是一个非常大的一个类别啊。大家如果来，请进。大家如果对经济学，大家如果对经济学了解的话，其实它这是一个非常非常大的一个类别啊。今天因为我们不是专题讲这个，就不把它展开讲。Political science 就是政治，philosophy 是哲学，然后 history 这也是很大的一个门类。psychology 我多说一句，其实最近这2年，我观察到，但我自己也不知道是什么原因啊。说心里话，我没想，很多孩子学 psychology，我真的不知道为什么。我看我们的 AP 课程的报名就看出来，AP psychology 的报名今年应该是除了 economics 之外第2个报名人数最高的课。所以其实我也没想明白为什么，是不是因为我们现在这个社会上心理上的这个状况比较多，有很多各种各样的焦虑，然后什么 depression 啊，这些可能状况是不是多一些，所以大家对心理学更加的关注啊。但是我不知道为什么啊，如果你们知道，你们可以告诉我，谁是这方面的专家，可以我们一起聊一下。但是我们看到的现象是，包括从 AP 课的报名啊这些，我们看到的现象就是，心理学这个专业呃最近的这个受欢迎程度蛮高的。然后最后就是 law。如果说到这个地方的时候，我想多说一句，就是我们刚才讲到了就是工程，我们讲到了这个医学或者生物医学，然后我们现在讲到 law， 等一下我们会讲到 business 啊。今天当然我们最重要的主题是讲 business。那讲到这些东西的时候，其实小朋友们有的时候他们经常会说，其实我也不知道我喜欢什么，我也不知道我到底适合干什么。那这里面带来一种情况，就是说我如果是蒙着头去报一个专业，你在本科的时候，假设我就学一个 health science，或者是我学一个什么什么 life science 这样的专业啊，然后呢，你期望将来它可以把你带进医学院，然后将来你可以当医生，不管你是当家庭医生还是当什么专科医生哈。但是你进到那个里面之后，其实发现你不喜欢，就你到了本科的时候，你发现其实哎呀，经常去干那个血淋淋的一些事情，好像我还蛮害怕的。那到那个时候，你可不可以转？
哎，老师好像声音又听不见了。老师
现
声音
在呢，
听不见。
可以吗？
哦，现在可以听到了，现在可以，
现在呢？现在可以吗
现在可以听到了，现在可以听到了。
？OK，是知道什么原因吗？从哪里开始大家听不见的？从进入那个专业开始看过。OK，那好吧，那我从那个地方开始。嗯，就是你进入到本科之后，你发现其实好像我不喜欢这个专业。刚才我们讲个例子嘛，举了个例子，比如说 health science 或者什么 life science 这种，我去到那个实验室里面有那些解剖什么之类的，我发现我不喜欢。 那你能不能转？你是可以转的，但是转的成本蛮高的，你要花时间要再去申请其他的专业等等等等啊。那有可能你前面学的那些课程可能不适合你的新的专业，搞不好你还要重修。所以你的时间的成本，包括什么学费的成本等等，包括你自己的那种情感的那种成本，其实都蛮高的啊。然后为什么你一定要转？就是你如果不转的话，将来你不做医生，那你学 health science，你学 life science，你将来你做，其实你那个就相对来讲，这些专业呢，它将来就业的出口不是特别特别宽。就是如果你指向性非常强的话，我们都知道，就是你这个指向性如果很强的话，你当然你得到了是一种专业的深度，但是你失去了是一个宽度。我不知道我说明白我的意思。那你不转的话，那你将来可能你将来的就业，如果你不走 medical school 的话，你的就业的状况，可以给你的选项不是那么多。所以那好，那你就去转，转的话就带来刚才我们说的问题，就是有可能会成本会比较高啊。那其实是有一个办法，这个是我不能说我发明的，是我觉得这个可能是一个不错的一个办法，就是什么呢？你应该在 high school 的时候去做这个试验的这个做这个试验的这个工作，或者说我经常讲叫试吃的工作。去今天中午要出去吃个饭，到底吃什么？我们到一个什么 food court，每个 sample 你尝一口，好吃你就买一份儿，或者你去 Costco，我们看到里面有好多那种试吃的那些柜台，吃完之后你好吃你就买一个，对不对？Costco 那大包，你不好吃你不喜欢你买一包回家浪费了，所以那个就是成本嘛，那个就是成本。所以你试吃一下，好吃你就拿走，不好吃你丢掉，那个成本会很低很低。那我们在高中的时候，其实你这个试吃的动作，是很容易在高中的时候完成。换句话说，你比如说，如果是 medical school，你在高中的时候你就去做叫 HOSA，HOSA。今天不是我们的重点啊，我们不去讲。那 HOSA 是什么？HOSA 就是叫 medical 跟医学相关的一个竞赛，它在很大一个程度上会给你一种很真实的、很现实的这个体验，就是将来你学医会是一个什么内容。你喜不喜欢？让你感受一下，就像你在 Costco 柜台上拿一个 sample food 放在嘴里面尝一下，一模一样的道理，对不对？那法学院，那你就去做叫 mock trial，我们这些课程我们也都有，所以你去做 mock trial 叫模拟法庭，你去感觉一下，那个是真的是就是真的是法庭，只不过是模拟的。然后有律师、有法官、有控方、有辩方，什么都有。你觉得做律师你喜不喜欢？喜欢你就往这条路上去，不喜欢换另外一个地方再试试一个啊，直到找到你喜欢的东西为止。那 business 是什么？business 实际上是 DECA 嘛，大家都知道啊，DEC 也就是 DECA 啊。那还有另外一个叫 FBLA，这些都是你在高中阶段你可以去做的这个叫试吃的动作，就是去尝试一下。那这个成本是极低，比你到了大学发现你不喜欢，你再去换专业那个成本要非常非常非常。所以我是强烈建议大家就是在高中的时候，尤其我们毕竟他十几岁的孩子，他真的不一定，有的时候他的那种喜欢是一种假象，是一种假喜欢。就像我们小时候有一种叫假近视，好像我觉得我近视了，其实你可能稍微注点意，过2天你就回去了，又正常，一样的道理。就是你去试一下，是找到你真正热爱的事情，因为你从事那个如果你不喜欢的事情，是事倍功半，你做了很多，然后你也不是很喜欢它，你也不是很 enjoy 它，最后还做不出一个好的结果来。我们希望能够让大家做到事半功倍的事情。所以回到我们今天最后一个，刚才我们说有4大类，第4大类就是 business related，这个实际上就是我们今天的主题了，商学院了。当然，商学院这一大类里面呢， 它也是种类很繁杂。我随便放了几个放在这个，当然这个绝对不是全部，就像前面一样，engineering 我也是给大家放了几个 sample 在里面，但是它绝对不是全部。然后在商学院商科这个领域里面，它有很多相关的，比如说 consulting，大家可能听说过，就是这种叫咨询公司。当然，这个现在不是一个专业了，这个将来之后毕业之后的一个细分，比如像 McKinsey 啊，像 The Bain 啊，什么 Boston Consulting 那这个里面最重要的，它叫 Business Consulting。这个一会儿可能 Eric 会跟大家讲，就 Business Consulting 是什么更多的就是说，你这个公司，举个例子，比如说索尼，索尼原来是一个这个 Sony 是最大的一个电视的这个生产厂商或者电子产品的生产厂商。那最近几年它在做转型，它在做转型，它更多的向它的这个内容方面去转，比如说音乐内容啊等等。那这个转型，它在很多时候它是在这些 consulting 公司的帮助之下来完成。就是说，我们更多的是给他一些 consulting 公司给这个公司更多的这种 strategy，这个 strategy 当然是基于他们对市场的认知啊，然后 finance 这个是一个巨大的一个领域。那 finance 这个里面，大家如果我不知道大家对这个领域有多么了解，大家如果知道的话，这个领域是跟计算机我们谈点俗的哈，我们谈钱哈，谈一下这个毕业之后，你看他喜欢，我谈钱他很有兴趣。想不想知道毕业之后能赚多少钱？本科之后毕业之后能赚多少钱？想不想知道？啊？OK，金融这个行业跟软件这个行业基本上是目前来讲本科之后相对，我们说相对啊，我说的不是就是全部。本科之后相对就业起始工资相对比较高的两个专业。那大概有多少呢？我知道的，当然我知道肯定不是全部，有一些那种非常高的，可能我都不知道，也许有可能。那我知道的，像在美国，美国整体的工资水平是比我们加拿大要高，所以在美国，计算机软件工程这个行业，好的基本上要有20万美元，本科毕业。你们怎么没有任何人有这种感觉啊？你们好像都司空见惯，是不是？有没有？有没有觉得很多？没有，现在不赚20万，我觉得蛮好的，因为坦白讲，我们刚一的时候，啊，
老师又听不见了。
要不要把我这个话筒打开？我用我的电脑话筒，现在可以吗？
现在好的，现在听得见了。
现在可以吗？
嗯，现在好的。
线上的同学们，
开一下
可
门
以啊。那刚才从哪断掉的？是不是
妞妞
我说到工资的时候断掉的？哈哈哈哈，连电脑都不干了，说到20万了。OK，好吧，再从20万开始啊。那美国的很多大厂，我们没有任何的，我们讲的是事实，我们讲的是 the fact。美国的很多大厂 其实每年会到加拿大的大学来招聘。那当然，大家可能比较知道的比较多的，就是像滑铁卢，滑铁卢的工程类、计算机类，尤其是当然它多数都是考 op，这些其实蛮受美国这种大厂欢迎的。甚至有的人开玩笑说，滑铁卢经常是一个专业整个被端到美国去，被端到什么加州啊、硅谷啊之类的。那是不是这个样子？我认为是对的，是有。所以软件工程这个行业，或者说 CS 这个行业，大概确实它从工作就业的这个需求上来讲，从它的工资来讲，其实是蛮吸引人的。这个为什么这些专业现在越加的水涨船高，或者我们叫卷难进？为什么大家都想进去？因为有一个很明确的一个将来的一个前程在那个地方啊。那难进到什么程度？基本上这个平均分你没有95分就甭想，甚至95分都不一定能够让你保证你能够进。你还要有非常强的 extracurricular， 就是我们说的是课外活动、课外竞赛。如果是说我们就谈滑铁卢，今天我们不谈美国大学，今天我们就谈加拿大大学。如果你就谈滑铁卢的话，那你基本上你可能需要，比如滑铁卢的数学竞赛，像 Euclid， 滑铁卢的物理竞赛，滑铁卢的这个物理竞赛叫 SIN， 滑铁卢的计算机竞赛叫 CCC， 你大概是需要这些。同时，你如果能够有其他的一些竞赛成绩，比如说 debate、模拟联合国等等，这些都会帮到你的这个申请。另外，就是你的申请文书写作、你的面试，这些能够给你带来加分的这些地方，就是不是仅仅简单的一个学习成绩，说我95，你就能够上得去啊。因为刚才我说的那个原因。那我们回到 finance 这个领域里面，其实它的起薪可能不一定有计算机这个行业那么高，就是刚刚开始，但是它的 ramp up 是比较快，它的这种向上的发展会很快啊。finance 这个领域里面，大概的将来的方向就是说，毕业之后去这种银行 investment banking， 这是大家都知道叫投行。当然，也有一些人相对来讲去这种叫 retail banking， 这个收入水平会低一些 ，investment banking 会高一些。那再往上一步呢，就是在 investment banking 再往上呢，一般大家知道的叫 venture capital， 风投公司，然后呢，这个hedge fund， 大家知道对冲基金，然后再下来 private equity， 叫私募基金啊。所以这些其实都是，就是越来越往南越来越难。你会发现你越来越走在这种独木桥上，就是他很多人会被筛掉，就是剩下的人越来越少啊，就淘汰率蛮高的。当然，你如果能够在这个领域里面走到最后的那个独木桥的时候，那个是非常 rewarding。所以很多给大家再给一个这个钱的概念啊，因为我觉得谈到钱大家都比较高兴。给大家一个钱的概念，如果你走在这种真的能够走到那种最后的那个独木桥上的时候，大概本科毕业5年之后，好一点的话，大概有1个million年薪所以有没有 exciting？ 有没有？有没有？你们又都没反应来，说明你们都赚1个million以上。那像华尔街，当然我们加拿大的这个Bay Street 这些大的金融的这些公司哈，不管是 investment bank consulting， 或者说刚才我们说的这种 private equity 啊 hedge fund 呀等等 他们会到加拿大这些好的这个商学这个商科的专业的学校去来招生。那一会儿 Eric 他是 Western Ivy， 所以他一会儿会讲他的经历啊，我就不讲了。他非常突出的一个经历，就是他在今年的这个状况，你们知道今年其实就业市场不太好，因为我们的这个一直在涨 interest rate 嘛，所以各个大公司的他们的成本都比较高，所以其实他们在 cut 这个招聘了 ，cut 这个 hiring。所以但是在今年这种就业市场的话，今年他的就业是非常亮眼，所以他还会在他们学校去辅导他的同学怎么去就业，怎么去 interview 啊，因为基本上他给他 interview 的机会他都拿到 offer。那某一种程度上来讲，他自己认为要归功于他当年底背的功底。这个我们也稍微这个沾点光，就是他的底背是从6年级开始就在我非常喜欢的一个学校，一会儿来了你们就知道。今天在路上可能有点堵车啊。那这个就是说你要进到
老师又听不见了。
大家都没有办法，好，稍等。好吧，好，现在能听见吗？
现在很清楚。
这个我可以吗？我们现在
非常好。
我们现在把它换掉了，从那个话筒换到我的电脑上，可能没有那个那么清晰，但是至少保证大家能听得到。好，那我们就继续啊。稍等，尽可能的把这个音量调大一点。
没有，音量挺大的。
可以啊，好，好，我把我的嗓门调大一点。为什么说很多我们有很多大学，然后呢，这个也有很多这种所谓的商科的一些专业，可是为什么说有的大学大家就是跟大家讲，你们最好要进这个专业，或者最好要进这个大学？其实这个也是比较俗的一个原因了。其实就是因为你要去看这些所谓的大厂，这些什么 Goldman Sachs、高盛这种银行，他去哪招聘，对不对？如果他就去 A 学校招聘，他每年就认准了我就去，我来你们加拿大我就去 A 学校招聘，那你非得跑 B 学校去读，那你跟他之间你是没有曝光度的，他看不见你，对不对？就是这个简单的道理。就是为什么？那当然，因为这个原因，所以 A 学校就变得很热门，A 学校就变得很抢手，然后大家都去趋之若鹜，然后 A 学校的那个招生的门槛就变得啊，就是这个，就是你要说简单，就是这么简单的道理。那基本上来讲，我们加拿大，现在看 business program，我们讲我们的安省，那基本上就4个学校，原来也是，就是 Western Ivy。UT 的 Rodman、Queen's Commerce， 还有一个 York Schulich， 基本上就这4个。我们的这个 business program。Eric。Okay, yeah, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Let me finish that then. Yeah, you can sit in my chair.
Okay.
Yeah, feeling important. Okay, let me finish this.
Yeah.
All right. 那就是这个原因。所以他们当然有一些在所谓的这些大厂里面，他们是有一些这个对各个学校他们是有一些评估的你比如说他们一线招生要去的这些学校，像什么Thank you， 像什么 Harvard Business School 啊，就是哈佛商学院啊，像 Wharton Business School 啊等等这些，这个是他们的一线。那像二线一点点的话，这个是有一会儿 Eric 会讲，这个他们有专业的这个区分。 那稍微招生给的名额少一点的话，像 Western IB 啊，那每年他们都会有，每年都会有，但有一些 Canadian 的这个 business program，这些公司根本去都不会去啊，我就不说名字了啊，这得罪人啊，好吧，对，万一这里面有一个是那个学校的呢，所以就是那些学校，他们如果都不会去的话，你就没有曝光度，就可能我很优秀的一个学生。但是我根本被那些大的这个银行也好，或者什么公司也好，他更看不到我啊，他看都看不见啊，就是这个很重要。所以为什么说跟大家说这些学校，你们要去选学校的时候，你们要去了解它，或者说你可以找我们来咨询一下，至少因为我们可以把这些信息告诉你。你就不用去走弯路，本来您可以选 A 学校，你非得去选 B，这个就是对你来说可能就是一个弯路啊，所以这个就是从公司的角度，我们来去看这些大学的这些 program。当然，在我们安省之外也有一些不错的 program，比如说 McGill 啊，像 UBC，其实它也有一个它的 business program 也还好啊。business 里面的细分呢，刚才我们讲到了 finance，讲到了这个 consulting，其实再往下就是 accounting。这个里面也是有很多所谓的大家知道的美国四大 Ernst Young、Deloitte、KPMG 等等这些，然后再下面，滑铁卢大学呢有一个专业叫 Sustainability 和 Financial Management，其实这个也是跟环境有关系，就是我们所谓的 sustainability，就是我们的环境要能够更加的宜居了啊。environment business 这也是最近几年蛮这个受大家关注的。计算机在滑铁卢大学，就我们都是用滑铁卢来举例子，因为它的计算机是比较出名。其实它的计算机，有好几个专业是跟 business 是 combine，它有这个 dual degree，当然它的 business 是给那个 Laurier 那个大学，沃特路自己的 business program 它没有，所以他把 business program 他是用 Laurier，这两个大学就挨在一起，都在滑铁卢市那个城市里啊。然后滑铁卢还有这个BA 和 Math 啊，Math Financial Analysis、Risk Management 啊等等等等这些专业，其实所有这些都是跟商科相关，我们就把它归到这一个大类business related program。Okay, I think this is all I want to talk about for today. Now Eric is here. I wanna give you guys a real quick intro, and then Eric, maybe you can talk more about yourself. Sure. Eric obviously is a Linky graduate. I mean, I like this guy a lot. Yeah, you came in Linky in grade 6 or 7.
I think it was grade 8.
Grade
Because
8.
you opened the school in
Okay.
the summer of 2016.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're the first group of students, right,
Right.
who came to Linky. 那Eric 又串到中文去了。So Eric is a great debater. He won numerous debating tournament awards. He's also a competitive figure skate. He compete on the national level. Real good, real good. I've seen his skating videos. It's pretty impressive. He got in Ivy, Western Ivy, 3 years ago. Currently, he's a rising senior. Yeah, year number 4. He got admitted, sorry, not admitted. He got offered by, one of the big firms. He will talk about it later by himself. Pretty rewarding experience. He's going to be working for that firm at least for the next few years, right? And yeah, I'll pass the podium to you, Eric. Let me share your
Yes.
let me share your slides. So this is a basic. Yes, we will. Let me share the slides. This is my slides, and then this is Eric's. Give me a second.
Would it be easier for us to switch chairs?
Yes, we switch shares, of
Yes.
course. All right.
Okay.
All right.
And
So,
I'm trying to confirm with you.
come over here.
What time? We're going
Maybe 45 minutes.
to? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everybody. 谢谢大家等我。我从伦敦开到这里，然后我在411上前面有车祸，所以走得很慢，比我想的要慢，所以谢谢大家等我来。我中文没有他们说，所以我是吧？是我觉得我可能得这个讲座得用英文做，要有问题可以啊，yeah yeah，让 Henry 用中文给你们把那些更难的话翻一下，yeah yeah，我们可以一起2人做的，所以 Canadian business schools，and so this is kind of what we're going to talk about 今天讲这些，little bit about me, a bit about business as a field and what kinds of jobs，读完了4年可以去工作干嘛，a little talk about Canadian business schools, kind of like why does it matter what program you go to, what are some best ones, my personal story, some best practices and advice, and close out with some questions. And I have a QR code at the very end that you can all scan to get a copy of this deck. So you don't even need to worry about taking pictures. I've got all that sorted out for you. So a little bit about me. 我自己说一说，Western University, 4th-year student at the Ivy School of Business. So I'm doing the Honors Business Administration program there. And for the first 2 years, I did economics. I graduated high school in the class of 2020 from the IB program at White Oaks. So if anybody in here is from Oakville, you might be familiar with that school. It's a public school just on the east end of the city. When I got admitted to Western, I was very lucky to receive an entrance scholarship called the President's Entrance Scholarship. And so they gave me $50,000 over 4 years. I also won a few smaller scholarships over my time at Western. And so altogether, I've probably gotten about 55 grand, which has been obviously really, really good for me and the family. And academically, I'm involved with Ivy in a number of ways. And so I'm working right now with my favorite professor actually at the school. I'm going to be a published author by the end of the year because we're going to publish a case on sustainability accounting together for students at other schools and at Ivy to use in the future. I'm working on a sustainability certificate. So Henry was actually just talking about sustainability a few moments ago. I'm doing the certificate program for that we have available through the school. I'm also working as a grader for the school and a teaching assistant for the accounting class. So yeah. All right. 对，这个是咱们就 bounce back and forth。我没那么多页。Yeah, I want to make sure everyone understands. Yeah. Yes, go for it. I'll point at you and you can take it over.
线上能听到我讲吗？我在这个地方，如果大家听到我稍微声音大一点。那 Eric 他叫 Eric 现在是Western IB 这个商学院的4年级学生。那他是从我们 Oakville 的 White Oaks 高中 IB 博物馆毕业，然后他在申请大学的时候呢，他拿到了一个奖学金，这个奖学金是5万块的，蛮大的一个奖学金。当然不太容易能申请，所以只会给这些 在某一个领域做的非常突出的学生可以拿到这样的奖金。所以那他在目前大学期间，他参与了很多事情。刚才我们讲到的这个 sustainability，
然后给对。
可持续性啊，就是我们的环境让它更加可持续，我们尽量这个少污染一些等等一些做了很多这方面的工作。
Sorry.
OK， 对。
Okay. So, professionally, I'm just gonna move this over. I'm returning full-time to my firm called EY Parthenon after completing an internship during this summer. And so in case you're not familiar, maybe you guys know kind of the yellow one here, that's EY or Ernst & Young. And so EY Parthenon is the strategy consulting department of Ernst & Young. And so some of the stuff I've done as a strategy consultant, I work on a team called Transaction Strategy and Execution. So I work primarily on M&A strategy. I also work on a team called the Software Strategy Group. And so we do business strategy specifically for technology companies, which is a space that I'm quite interested in. And so for both teams, I was actually the first intern that they'd ever hired in Canada. And I'm the first kind of student hire for our software strategy team. And so it's pretty cool. I get the opportunity to build the practice up in Canada. And so if you look at that picture there, that's kind of, they took that photo from Toronto City Hall there. There's the EY Tower in downtown Toronto, and me and my team, you could find us near the top on the 39th floor. There's 40 floors to the building. What I did this summer, some of the cool stuff that you get to do as a consultant, I got the opportunity to help with creating a multi-million-dollar, several-year-long integration plan for a business that bought kind of a smaller competitor, about $500 million of revenue a year. I got to, definitely in line with my sustainability interests, I got to help publish kind of like a research document on the role that M&A could play in driving the energy transition. So switching over from coal and oil over to like solar and wind and other greener forms of energy that are better for the environment. I worked with a small health tech startup to help them build out a scale up and product strategy. And we basically revamped what their company does. I built out kind of a costing model, which ultimately informed the valuation of a deal for a big US industrial goods company. So I feel like I got to do a lot of interesting stuff this summer in that space. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm pretty excited to go back full time. Previously, I was working in technology audit, so I did that for my second year summer. And for my first year summer, I worked at a small e-commerce technology startup. So I've been working kind of all through my summers and years.
Great. 那 Eric 刚才我记住 ，Eric 刚才讲实际上他在讲他自己目前今年暑假实习的这个公司叫 Ernst & Young， 我不知道这个中文怎么翻。这个是美国全球最大的4个consulting auditing 公司Ernst & Young、KPMG、Deloitte、PwC。这个叫 Pricewaterhouse 所以这四大当中的一个 Ernst & Young。那跟大家讲一下，这个我算是补充了，不是 Alex 上面，就是在我们本科生就业当中最难得的一个就业方法，就是3年级暑期实习之后，你直接拿到那个公司给你的 return offer。什么意思就是我大3毕业，不是毕业，大3结束，我那个暑假我去实习，我实习的那个公司觉得我的表现非常棒，直接给我发一个 return offer。什么叫 return offer？ 就是回学校再读1年，对不对？你还有4年级没读完，你回学校读4年级，读完之后直接到我这上班，不用再找工作了，我现在就雇佣你这个叫 return offer。通常还有signing bonus， 通常还有signing bonus， 叫润笔费。接受这个立刻给1万块、2万块、5万块不让你。还有signing bonus， 所以其实这个是很棒的一种，就是很 rewarding 当然你需要有非常好的这种 这种工作表现，这个公司才会给你这样的这种 turn offer。那说到这个地方呢，我就再多说一句，如果我们在做，你现在我相信我们都是9年级、10年级、11年级、12年级，目前都是高中阶段，对不对？那等你上大学的时候，最重要的一件事情就是你在大学1年级暑假的时候就要想办法开始做实习工作，就要做 internship。这个 Eric 可能他也有体验，就是你1年级的时候大学，你的暑期你就要想办法去找一个 internship。那个 internship 可能是很低的，可能是薪水也很低，甚至搞不好都没有薪水，没关系，你都要去做。为什么？因为你1年级暑期有一个这样的经验，你2年级暑期就会比较好。你2年级暑期有这个经验，你3年级暑期就比较好。我们有的孩子1年级说，哎呀，太难了，不找了，我到2年级再开始。2年级这些公司更愿意接受我，他们觉得我们1年级都太幼稚了，不接受。好，你到2年级找，你到2年级找的时候，你会发现，其实比1年级一点都不简单，因为你没有前面的经验。然后你说2年级我也不找，我就等到3年级，3年级会更好。3年级不找，等到大学毕业的时候再去找full time。很多时候就是毕业之后发现，有的学生真的毕业之后没有工作，然后在外面晃几个月，甚至又晃1年，然后搞不好回到校园又去读个什么双学位，什么 second degree，是这样出来的，就是这样出来的，这个连锁反应是这样出来的，好吗？所以今天你们来听这个，不光听这些书，刚才我这段话，今天来了全部知道。然后他现在而且这样的工作，更多的是 M&A 的工作，刚才讲，不知道大家知不知道 M&A，就是 merge and acquisition，公司跟公司之间经常会有这种互相的收购并购啊，比如说我们加拿大的 Tim Horton 就跟美国的这个叫什么 Burger King 就并到一起，并成一个公司。那这么大的公司，它并到一起的时候，它有大量的工作要做，对不对？你值多少钱，我值多少钱，并了之后，你的岗位还要不要？我的岗位还要？两个 CEO 现在变一个 CEO，那谁干谁不干等等大量的，所以他们是在帮助去做这个所以那当然这个是专业程度非常高，除了像他们这种 consultant 进去以外，像是 lawyer 进去，然后就是 accountant 这些都要进去，就是财务方面、法律方面，这是一个非常大的一个 project。当然具体的很细节的东西，我们今天来讲。OK，
Okay, perfect. This is just about me. I figure skate. So I compete for the Western team. I'm on the varsity team. I'm learning how to cook this year. So I got the opportunity to make some pasta and some stir fry there. I definitely miss my mom's cooking at home. So for all of you children in the audience, be grateful that your mom still cooks for you. Um, I love the outdoors. I've been out west, I've been out east. I just love spending time outside and exercising that way. And I listen to a lot of music. Um, I play the piano, I can play the clarinet. I'm learning how to play the guitar right now because I've got some extra time on my hands. This summer I went to 2 concerts. So there's All Time Low there. In the middle, they are a pop punk band, and this girl here on the right is this girl named Maisie Peters, probably my celebrity crush. Do we need to touch on this one? Okay.
The picture tells her.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Okay. So business as a field as a whole, right? Reasons as to why you might study business and things about business that might be different from other fields that you could choose to study, right? And so I think the first one is that, and call this out early because probably a lot of you are thinking about it, is that business pays well in comparison to a lot of other fields, right? I think it's just up there, like the range of outcomes is just up there with computer science. It's just up there with engineering, right? You can make a lot of money if you play your cards well. I think I'd get in trouble if I told you exactly how much I get paid, but I get paid enough to live in Toronto on my own, right? When I graduate. And obviously, I can put down a mortgage, I can have my own little box in the sky, right? And have fun in the city. I think I'm very lucky, privileged to be able to do that, right? But the thing that I think really makes business pretty nice as a degree is that you get a lot of really good jobs and a lot of really good opportunities with a 4-year degree, right? Because there's a lot of different fields like medicine, like law, where you have to spend several more years doing like a master's degree or going to medical school in order to be able to get to the good jobs that people want to work. Whereas in business, after you do 4 years, you can start going into like consulting, banking, accounting, the stuff that people are trying to get to as an end goal. There's also a big diversity of work available within business. And so you can take your business degree and you can do just about anything. Consulting, finance, accounting, these are all very, very different things. And so I think it's really good if you're not fully sure what you want to do yet, and you would appreciate having a little bit of extra time to learn more about yourself and your own interests in university. I know definitely for me, I needed that extra time to kind of figure out where I saw myself landing full time. I will say there's a big emphasis on networking and soft skills in business. And so you definitely are forced to kind of like come out of your shell a little bit if you're somebody who's maybe not quite as strong in that area right now. So for example, my full-time job at EY Parthenon, that was something that I got through a networking opportunity. I spoke to people inside of the company while I was working there the previous summer in the audit department. So you really need to learn how to sell yourself. And that's something that they're going to teach you. And that's something that you're going to figure out how to do over your time in school. I think if you rise to the challenge, you come out with some like lifelong soft skills. It's going to help you no matter where you go. And there's lots and lots of learning on the job afterwards too. School is really only the basics that, they teach you, right? They give you the fundamental tools, but nobody teaches you how to do, say, M&A due diligence at school. And so being able to learn really quickly and just like think critically in general, I think is really important. Lastly, it's not as technical of a degree. There's a bit less of a focus on your technical, say, math, chemistry, physics that you might find in a med sci or an engineering degree. And so I think this can be a positive if you're somebody who's maybe not the greatest with numbers and not the greatest with wrapping your head around those kinds of concepts. It might be a negative if you're maybe more interested in, say, technology or engineering. In that case, I would suggest maybe considering like a dual degree, because a business degree can be really helpful to prove that you have the soft skills to succeed in the professional world. But it is true that you might have a little bit of a hard time breaking into, say, like a software development role with nothing but a business degree.
为什么学习商科那他在这个幻灯片里面，基本上 Eric 在讲为什么学习商科High average pay 这个刚才我已经讲过，讲到那个你来之前我们会兴奋，赚多少，所以就不再说了，大家都知道他们赚多少钱。Eric 他也不想告诉我们他能赚多少钱，但是他告诉我们他能在多伦多能够生活的非常好我们知道这个就可以了然后有非常多的这个工作的机会，当然。为什么我觉得 Eric 今年是非常出类拔萃 outstanding？ 就今年整个的大的就业环境并不好，我们整个的 workspace 的 hiring 今年实际上是在被 cut， 不是某一个公司 cut， 是整个全面的 cut。所以如果你看那些大厂，包括什么 Goldman Sachs、什么 Facebook、Microsoft， 大家其实都在 cut。那在这种大的背景环境之下，他能够很顺利的拿到这种 internal offer， 而且是那项蛮难得的就是大三3年级暑期结束就拿到这个 full-time offer， 这个蛮难得非常非常值得我们为他高兴。这个我真的是在这种环境下 very very difficult to get one, right? But you made it there.
Yeah. I'm done.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
然后他也讲到了几个比较重要的事情，就是我们的这种所谓的 soft skill， 就我们一些软能力。那这个软能力我不能不说，Eric 在我们他高中的时候，其实我们就看到他在这方面的一些潜力，跟我们的 debate program 也有一定的关系那他也在高中的时候也一直做 DECA， 所以 DECA 刚才跟大家讲的，它是一个 business combination， 就是如果你想体验一下什么是 business，什么是将来的 business school，那你应该在高中的时候就去做 DECA，这个它是个竞赛，但你可以在我们这儿来学习，在我们这儿培训，然后你出去参加比赛。DECA 一会儿 Eric 可以多说一点点啊，介绍一下 DECA。那我稍微说一下，DECA 有4个category，就是我们叫4大项，分别是 finance、marketing、business administration 和 hospitality。然后里面还分50个小项目，就是你要选其中一个，然后去比赛。这个当然会给他带来非常多的这种帮助。刚才我们说的这种 soft skill 你怎么去 interview，你怎么去在 interview 的时候这个现场能够展现你的这种认知水平，能够展现你对一些问题的这种 analysis 和 solution，就是我们说的对问题的分析和解决问题的方案和方法。那这些其实都是可以经过训练可以培养的，好吗？然后包括你的这种这种倾听能力，理解别人的能力然后表达你自己，把你的声音传递给别人的能力，这个都是非常重要的，尤其在他的这种 interview 然后像你在实习的这种工作当中，你能够拿到这些 return offer，就是这些东西你要表现的非常的有效。OK， so the next one.
Okay, so I'll go a little bit faster through some of these, but I have a few slides going over kind of like what kinds of jobs you might be able to do coming out of business and what they look like. And so I work as a consultant, and so I put consulting first. I think with this one, you can kind of think of yourself as like a doctor for a business, okay? And so if your client doesn't know how to do something, right? Like maybe they've never done M&A before, they just don't know how to approach it. Maybe they don't want to do it themselves. Or they're not allowed to do it themselves in the case of, say, like certain kind of like audit work or something like that, right? Or perhaps they want an outside perspective. They just want to hear what somebody else thinks about the company. Typically, then they bring in a consultant from outside. And so that's somebody who can kind of come in, give them their perspective, give them that advice, help them through their problems. Now, there's lots and lots of different kinds of consulting. There's relatively technical stuff like you could be working like very, very detailed technology implementation. The kind of stuff I do is like a little bit more kind of like high level strategy work. And so we kind of help make those big decisions for the companies, and then they do it afterwards on their own or with another team. It's pretty cool. I like it because you always face lots of problems. Like every single month or so, every 2 months, you'll start a new project. And so you'll get to see a different company, different problem, different industry. You're learning a lot. You're always learning, which I like a lot. You also get some really cool exit opportunities. So if you decide that maybe you don't want to be a consultant anymore, you can go do strategy for another corporation. You can work in private equity if you're in the M&A space. You can do technology as well if your team is related to that. And so starting out in consulting actually opens even more doors for you moving forward down the line, which I appreciate. The pay is good, but it is not a 9 to 5 job. You don't get to go home at 5 o'clock every day. I think we have a mentality that we're here to serve the client. They're paying us a lot of money to get to the answer for them. And so we kind of have to serve the client. Sometimes that means you stay as long as you need to finish work. Now, this summer, I think my team took pretty good care of me. They were very nice to me and everything, and they took care of my work-life balance. And so I probably did about like 45, 50 hours a week on average, maybe closer to like 50 hours a week on average. There were some longer ones when our projects were due. There were some shorter ones where I didn't have that much to do. At certain other firms, you might be doing like 50, 60 hours consistently. So it is a little bit demanding. You have to kind of earn that paycheck and earn those opportunities, right? But I think one thing that's really nice is that because we are the product, right? Kind of the ideas that we're coming up with are what the firm is selling. Consultancies care a lot about taking care of their people. And so, for example, if I ever decide I want to do an MBA, I can apply to have them pay for it. If I stay in the office past 6 o'clock, they'll pay for my dinner because they don't want me to work while I'm hungry. If I stay really late, they'll pay for me to get home because they want me to be safe. Sometimes our clients, they want to see us in person. They don't want to be doing Zoom meetings. And so they will fly us out to Calgary or fly us to Montreal. And of course, we want to have like good social bonds because it's very like team heavy work. And so probably once every month or two, we'll go out for a social as a team together, drink or go, do some kind of game together, and it'll be a lot of fun. And so one, I think, benefit of working at a consultancy is that they take really good care of their people.
Yeah, consulting 这个领域这几个公司大家看到那个啊，刚才我们都提到的Bain啊，什么经济啊等等这些啊，Ernst Young这些公司，他们很多是按照行业要有细分比如说有人专门是做软件这个行业，有人专门做 real estate 房地产等等等等有的人专门做什么 consumer product，就是他们有很多行业线。那所以你在做 consulting 的时候，如果你进到这个行业之后，其实你有非常多的机会去了解更多的领域，了解更多的行业。所以它不是一个就是我们所谓的那种万金油，我什么东西都懂点，什么东西都不精通，其实不是。其实他们在某一个行业里是非常精通。你想想那些大的公司找到他们，让他们给他们去做这些所谓的策略分析的时候，如果你对这个行业不精通，你给人分析啥？所以你其实理论上来讲，有的时候你应该比他们更精通只不过他们更多的是这种 day-to-day operation， 他们关注的是每天的这种运营的情况，那你更多的是关注这种大的市场宏观的这些策略。这样的工作，其实包括刚刚我一开始跟大家说的那种，比如说华尔街的那些 finance 金融的那些工作，非常 rewarding。你看到他们的收入，然后看到他们的每天那种生活那种 lifestyle， 非常这种出入一些非常让大家很羡慕的一个场合，但这些都不是白来的，这些通通所有这些工作的小时绝对不是9到5。我们国内有一个说法叫996，996什么概念？一个星期是72个小时。我跟你们讲，华尔街很多地方每个星期工作小时差不多到80，甚至更多。所以国内的996，其实真正到很多一些 finance 公司里根本不叫什么。所以那个我们看到了人家的那些光鲜的时候，其实背后有非常多的汗水，有的时候是泪水，这不容易。可是年轻人，我认为应该去做这个事情，到我们这个年龄就算了。年轻人我觉得应该闯，应该去锻炼一下自己。你们有这么多的 energy， 你们有这么多的创造力，你们应该去更多的做这样的事情。All right?
Maybe not 9 to 9, 6 days, but I think probably like 9 to 7, 5 days a week there. And then when you throw in kind of the train from Toronto back to where I live in Burlington, it becomes more like kind of 7 to 8 or 7 to 9 gig on some days. But we don't work weekends. Consultants don't work weekends. Who does work weekends though are these guys in finance. The finance guys work weekends. And so even though I've just kind of called it finance, it's actually a very, very diverse field. And so you can do lots of work within finance. You can be an investment banker working with companies who are trying to raise money or buy other companies. If you're in asset management, you're maintaining kind of like a portfolio of investments. And so, for example, if you have a pension through the government, an asset manager is in charge of making sure that you don't lose all your money. You can work in sales and trading where you're kind of on the trading floor, putting through different orders for securities. You can work in corporate or commercial banking where you're helping clients get money when they need it. And so I think the work here maybe isn't quite as diverse as consulting based on what I've heard from my banking friends, because a lot of the times they are building out financial models with like similar steps in similar situations. You don't get like the diversity of industries and situations that you do in consulting. What you do get though, is you get paid a lot of money, like a lot of money. It's not unheard of that there's friends of mine who've come out like of school and they're making $150,000, $200,000 a year in the United States. It's a lot of money. Of course, with everything, there's a cost, and that is the work. And so 70 to 80 hours a week, the 996 is not unheard of, right? But what you get in exchange for that and I think this is true for consulting, true for accounting as well, is because you're working so hard, you're moving up very, very quickly in terms of your promotions. Like, for example, for me, if I stay at my current firm, I can probably expect to get like paid 10, 15% more every year I stay, right? I can jump up a new rank about every 2 years I stay. And so you move up very quickly because of how hard you work. There's exit opportunity. If you decide, I don't want to be in finance anymore, working at one of the banks or funds, then you can go to other financial opportunities that typically will either pay you better for your experience or give you a better work-life balance so you don't have to work as hard. If you want to work in the US and make the American kind of salaries, finance is probably your best path to do it from Canada, because a lot of these firms are willing to go through the process of sponsoring visas and stuff for Canadians to get access to the best talent here in Canada. You don't have to be a numbers genius. I don't even think you need to be a genius to do finance, to be honest. But what you do need to is you need to start early. And so all of my friends who did well in finance and are now working, say, $150,000 a year, San Francisco, New York City, something like that, they started in their first year. They knew that they wanted to be investment bankers. And so they sat down, they started practicing their technicals and learning kind of how to build the models. They started going to these networking events. They started looking for internships right from the very beginning, because the one thing about these finance companies is that they recruit very, very early. And so they will come to school and they will pick their students pretty much earlier than anybody else does. So you have to know that this is what you want kind of going to school.
那个我发现 Eric 要讲的我都已经讲过，我已经预测了。
Oh, good.
我刚刚跟你讲，刚刚我们都讲过这个，就是finance 基本上就是金融这个领域里面是，如果你想要进这个美国这些所谓的大厂的话，是蛮容易走通的一条路。就像一些华尔街的这些银行也好，或者说这些 fund 也好。他们会到加拿大这些学校来招聘，但不是所有的加拿大学校。Western Ivy 他们会来那有这么几个学校他们会来那就为什么刚才我们也说到，就是你要选择好你的 business， 你要选择这些大厂要愿意来去招聘的人，对不对？他不去的你就别去了。这个他们是有一个说法叫 semi
target.
Semi-target.
We'll talk about it later.
Ariel will talk
15 minutes, 20 minutes or so. Yeah.
Semi-target, full target, no target. 这个是有说法的。full target 一会儿会讲。所以就是这个是一个很容易走到这种最前沿的这些金融行业的这么一条通道。当然进去之后不就是70到80个小时。每周的这个工作小时，这个不是我老讲，这个就是现实。你拿到那个薪水，你就要付出那样的同时你怎么能够走通这条路？刚才 Eric 也说了，其实我刚才他之前我跟你讲，你要从1年级要开始，1年级你要开始。如果1年级你没准备好，2年级你发现你的机会减少，3年级你发现机会又减少，所以就是一定要早一点。如果我想做这件事情，我真的想要冲到这种最前沿的金融领域里面，你要早开始，你一定要早开始。什么工作呀？工作非常难有投行有什么对冲基金什么hedge fund 还是说过venture capital 风险投资很多。非常容易，这个种类。
Accounting. And so here, what you're doing is you're really helping to review financial statements. You're making sure that all of the numbers are correct. You're looking at the controls over financial reporting. You're making sure that the company that you're working with is compliant with the law. In short, you make sure nobody's cooking the books at the company that you're working for. I think in all honesty, the pay for accounting jobs isn't quite like consulting, isn't quite like banking at the beginning. It's like a little bit lower. But the good thing about accounting is that it grows very quickly, just like those two other fields. And once you get your CPA designation, you basically are guaranteed a job for life. We don't have enough CPAs right now. We have a shortage of qualified accountants. And so if you decide to get your CPA and you kind of stick to it and you're smart enough to pass it, you basically have a job for life. And the nice thing is that the biggest companies, so Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, and EY, in the accounting space, they'll pay for all of it. So all of your study materials, all of your test attempts, all of that is paid for. And so again, it kind of goes back to that investing in the people sort of idea here. Now, hours can be like a little bit difficult during busy season. That's kind of the term that we use to describe the period of time right before the audit needs to be handed in to the government. But overall, it's like less work than your consultants, less work than your bankers. Your hours aren't always bad. It's also a little bit easier to recruit for, I think, compared to consulting and investment banking, because turnover is very high. A lot of people leave, and they need a lot of people. There's a lot of companies out there that need their financial statements reviewed, right? And so we need a lot of people to do this kind of work. And so the accounting industry is actually going through some difficulties attracting talent right now. So this is something that you want to do. It's a very, very viable pathway to break into. And you can exit into lots of really interesting kind of finance and accounting related roles, whether you're working, say, financial planning, you're on the CFO track at a Fortune 2000, you might be doing internal accounting or finance, you could be doing M&A work, lots and lots of opportunities from accounting jobs as well, once you've put in a bit of time.
Harry，其实我们现在介绍的，如果你读这个商科啊，将来你有可能面对的这些就业的路径。所以我们刚才讲了 consulting 属于咨询公司，我们讲了 finance 属于一个金融领域，那现在我们在讲的 accounting， 实际上就是会计和审计，那相比前面这两个 consulting finance， 会计跟审计，坦白讲，它那个earning 薪水没有那两个高，这个稍微相对来讲低，但是你进去之后呢，其实你一个成长不错。那另外一个呢，就是这个领域呢，流失率蛮高，就很多年轻人进去干几年，他就转到比如说 banking 去了，刚才说投行去了，他就离开了。所以呢，但是这个领域又是一个硬需求，因为所有的公司都需要 accounting， 都需要 audit。所以那换句话说，就这些其实这些 firm， 像我们这个屏幕上这些大的这些公司，它每年是要大量的要招聘啊。所以如果你对这个行业里有兴趣，那其实这个行业将来的需求量，这个领域将来是很有很多机会，它的竞争不会像 consulting、finance 那么激烈。
但是你能得着你的 CPA， you know, you have a job for life. Yeah. Industry or internal roles. And so I use industry to talk about like any company where you're not working for another company. Okay, like for consulting, for finance, for accounting, you're working for these other companies, right? They're your clients. Here, there's no client or anything. You're actually just working at the company. And so maybe like I have a friend, for example, and she manages strategy and data analytics for a specific credit card at a bank. I have another friend who does marketing campaigns. If anyone's familiar with Aritzia, she works in Vancouver and she designs marketing campaigns for that clothing brand. A good buddy of mine, one of my best friends this summer, worked at managing kind of like client relationships at a sports company in Toronto. I know somebody else who worked on a team that managed purchasing decisions for a company in the oil and gas sector. And so in short, this is basically all of the stuff that makes the business run from the inside. Now, the pay is probably like a little bit lower at the beginning, and you do have slower advancement in because oftentimes these are longer term roles. There's not that many people jumping around. It's more stable work. And so it's going to take you a little bit longer to make your way up. But the really good thing here is that you have awesome work-life balance. Most of these jobs are 9 to 5s. You're not going to be staying up till 2 a.m. your consultants and your bankers. So if work-life balance is something that matters to you a lot and you want to have a life, you know, and do other stuff, I guess, like definitely don't count business out either, because there's lots and lots of jobs that will allow you to do something really interesting while also having a balance in your life, if that's something that matters a ton to you, right? And I think the really cool thing is just that there's a lot of diversity. So you kind of do, there's all sorts of roles that you can do out in industry, and you can exit into all sorts of other companies that are working in like a similar space.
Well, industry internal roles，这就是在各个行业里面，其实他们都需要这些受过训练的这些商科的学生、商科的专业人士。那你比如说某一个公司Nike，它可能需要一个 marketing 的一个职位或者需要一个 internal 的这种finance accounting 的职位，或者需要一个 customer relation 的。所以大量的公司，它右边呢有这么多公司，那每个公司都学，对不对？我们 Linky 我们这个学校我们也学，我们需要 marketing，我们需要 customer service，所有这些可能都我们会需要这些从有这种受过商科专业训练背景这些专业人士来帮助我们当然这个领域不会像前面那些领域那个所谓的 earning 那么高，它同时对应的就是说他的工作小时也长，这个就很正常的，就是我们所谓的朝九晚五你大概就1周40个，相对就轻松一点当然你的这个return 也没有那么高，就是这个其实就是大家的一个trade off，一个 balance。
It depends on what you want out of it, right? I think there's no wrong choice.
如果你很 aggressive， 就是很 ambitious， 非常有野心，雄心勃勃，希望将来能做，希望把我自己带到一个更高的一个社会阶层当中，那可能是前面那几个consulting finance， 当然你要付出许多倍的这种努力和辛苦。
There's also some stuff that you can do that intersects with business, right? Just because you're going to study business doesn't mean you can't wrap in something else that you're interested in. And so let's say you're interested in technology. A lot of roles like product management, technology sales, technology consulting, software development, they like to see that you have maybe a double degree in business and computer science, because it proves that you can do the technical, but you can also do the soft skills, which I think isn't something that we can always count on, right? There's a lot of computer science people that have no soft skills at all, right? And so to have that business degree to show them that you kind of step into both of these worlds, it makes you much more competitive. And it allows you to kind of work in some really interesting spaces, like, for example, managing a product at Google or Facebook, right? I think for engineering, very similar rationale to the above, right? If you have a business degree and an engineering degree, they can trust them. You know your technical stuff, and that they're able to say, put you in front of a client, put you in front of other people, have you work on a team. You become that much more employable. You can do business law. Business and corporate law, of course, is another field where the pay is great, but you have to go to school for a while. It's competitive. You work long hours and they demand a lot of you, right? But for those of you that are interested in law, you can absolutely make that work within kind of the context of business. Medical science as well. There's lots of opportunities to work kind of a med sci perspective into business, right? And so whether you're doing, say, like healthcare or life sciences consulting, because there are consulting companies and teams that specifically work with healthcare companies. You could be working at a pharmaceutical firm on the business side. You could be working insurance, incorporating kind of both business and medicine there. So lots of opportunities to kind of like mix other stuff with business as well. Don't feel like you're closing those doors necessarily.
这些我也讲过，刚才也讲，我也预测到Eric要讲的。其实我们现在大学里面有很多这种叫交叉学，就是说 business， 但是比如滑铁卢它有 business 有 computer science 这个 combine 或者 dual degree 叫双学位有 math 和 business analysis combine 等等，就是有很多交叉学，或者我们叫复合人才，这个词大家听过，就是我既有商科背景，同时我要有一个，比如说 computer science， 这是一个复合型的这样的一个专业人士。Okay,
so a little bit of advice for actually once you get into university. how do you actually get into these areas, right? And so one really good way to do it is to speak to people that actually work in those fields. You could hear their advice, you can also get what they think about what they do. And so it's a really good way to figure out, like, do I actually want to do this job, right? Like when I spoke to some investment bankers the first year, and they told me about their 70, 80-hour work weeks. And I was like, okay, maybe this isn't right. I am willing to work hard, but I don't want to work 80 hours. I need some time to do other stuff. I want to exercise. I want to, I want to have a social life, all that stuff, right? Networking is also really important to landing a job in business, right? That's just kind of how it is. A lot of the times you get a ton of people who could do the job or who look like they could do the job. And so if you know people, if you've made a positive impression, well, this doesn't have to be like, sometimes when we talk about networking, we think about it like, oh, family connections, I've got rich parents who are going to help me get a job, right? I don't mean that kind of stuff. I don't. Like my mom and dad work in totally different areas. My dad's an engineer. But I would just email these people. I'd be like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about what you do and what your team does and what your company does. I would talk to them. We'd have a good conversation, and then they'd be willing to help me out when I was looking for a job later. Because one advantage of being a student, I think, is that almost everybody wants to help you. And so you really should use that. It's like a little superpower that you have at your advantage here. Some other things you could do is join clubs at your school, participate in events that are related to the field. So let's say you want to be a banker, there's probably going to be like different investing competitions and like investing societies that you can join. You can work in internships related to the field. And so some fields, for example, finance, they're going to care a lot that you have past experience, that you've worked here before. This is actually really similar to high school, but you need to keep your grades up and you want to try to get some leadership experience. And so all of the clubs that you're doing, all of the studying that you're doing, unfortunately, that has to continue through university. You don't get a break just because you arrive on campus, sadly. And then once you've kind of settled on a field, then you want to spend the time to learn those technicals or learn how to succeed on, say, an interview. So, for example, for consulting, they're testing your critical thinking, but there's a way that you can get better at thinking as a consultant. For finance, they're testing your technical ability and your understanding of how these financial statements work. And so that's something that really just comes with sitting down and spending a few good hours on books and learn this material to heart.
Yeah. 这块我 I think we need to move a bit faster. 那我很快说一下，其实你怎么知道你将来要进入到哪个行业，或者说你将来会热爱哪个行业？其实我觉得就是开始我们也是讲到了，你要去试，你要去跟不同的人多去跟他去talk，去吸取别人的经验，去听取别人的意见，或者你自己你可以去做一些尝试。那大学里面有很多这种俱乐部、这种 club， 有 investment club， 有 case competition 这些，你去尝试，你在尝试的过程当中，其实你会找，你会找到我这个喜欢，我那个不喜欢。另外就是多跟行业多联系、多连接，这种 connection， 这种 communication 是极其重要的。那我们现在其实做的很多事情，或者说我们想办法去培养大家在高中阶段的一些技能、一些技巧，在这个时候你会发现都会有。所以大家有的时候说看到我们的一些课程，说为什么要去学这个，这有什么用？慢慢你会发现，它会帮到你。
Perfect. So let's talk about different programs in Camden. And so I want to start by talking a little bit about why would you even care about this? And I think Henry's touched on this. I'll go fast, right? Now, obviously, we're talking about average outcomes here. Like, your school isn't going to be like a magic ticket. You still have to get to campus and work really hard. You still have to study, you still have to go to class, you still have to work your internships and join your clubs and everything. But your school plays a big role in determining what the final range of outcomes look like. It gives you a really big boost. Let's say you go to Ivy and you work really hard. You're probably going to end up doing better than somebody from like, maybe like a lower ranked school that works just as hard as you. Because like, and honestly, sometimes I think it's a little bit unfair, but like companies, sometimes they won't even come to your school. You might not have anybody from your school who works in consulting, in finance. There just might not be people for you to talk to. And that makes it a bit harder because usually you're reaching out to people from your school. You have that thing in common, right? You might not have like I don't know, maybe you don't have like a technology club. So if you're interested in technology consulting, there's nowhere for you to go, right? And perhaps your school doesn't have such a good career management department, so they can't help you with recruiting and resume, cover letters. And so even if you work just as hard as somebody who went to Ivy, because that person who got into Ivy has more resources, they're probably going to go a little bit further. And so that's, I think, kind of the key advantage of going to a better program. You can make it work. If you don't go to a great program, you can try to make it work, right? But it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle. So why put yourself through that uphill battle? Put in the work through high school, get yourself kind of ahead of the start, right? And go from there. It makes your life so much easier. And so competitive programs oftentimes draw in competitive students, and that creates a really motivating environment and a really good culture, right? For us, it's like, if I want to study, I say, oh, hey guys, I can't come to party today. I'm studying, I'm recruiting, I'm interviewing. People aren't going to go, oh, Eric, you're a loser, right? Come out and party with us. They go, oh, do you want any help? Do you want me to interview with you, right? Because we're all going for the same kind of high things. And so the people around you kind of understand what it's like, because everybody's working really, really hard on their own kind of journey, right? And so I think it builds a really good culture there where you have people around you who will bring you up, right? Like when I was interviewing for consulting, I probably practiced 15, 20 interviews before I did my real ones. And all of those were with my friends because they were all interviewing at the same time. So we just help each other practice on the weekends, right? You get that community when you go to a competitive program with other very driven people. There's a really strong alumni network, right? You bring a bunch of smart people to one place, they go out into the real world. A lot of them are going to do big things too. So you can reach out to the alumni. We have a really well-funded, helpful career management department. We have a bunch of career recruiting resources that might not be available at smaller or lesser known programs. Henry was talking earlier about this idea of target schools. We'll go a little bit further into this, but it's the idea that sometimes companies, they can't go to every school. They don't need to go to every school. They'll go to the top 2 or 3 of them and then call it a day. And so if your school isn't as good, you may never even see the application. You might not even have the chance to apply, right? Like for Parson on this year, we took applications from the Ivy, Queen's, and U of T in Ontario. And I think that was it. And so if you go to the other schools, you don't even have the chance to apply for the job that I'm doing, right? And, you know, I honestly think it's a little bit unfair. I think we're missing out on a lot of people, but we don't need to hire 100. We need 5 students, right? And so we can get them all from Ivy. I can understand why they do it, right? The brand name and the reputation is better. You have more opportunities on campus through clubs, through competitions, even through your professors, right? Like I've had professors reach out to me and be like, Eric, you did well in my class. Do you want to help me with my research, right? Or what do you think about coming back and helping us teach this class? I reached out to my professor. He was like, yeah, I'll help you write this case so you can, you know, explore this interest of yours and become a published author. He doesn't get paid anything extra for it, right? But he's a really awesome professor. And so you get these kinds of resources that maybe you wouldn't have at other schools if you go looking for them, right? And of course, it ultimately shows up in the outcomes, right? Like if you look at our Ivy report from 2022, obviously there's a little bit of with any of these reports, what I will offer as a disclaimer is that there's a little bit of a skew upwards because the people that get really good jobs are more likely to show up, right? But you can see here that Ivy in 2022, our average total salary coming out of the program was about $90,000. At UBC, and it was a year ago, but inflation is not like 100%, thank God, $57,000 in 2020, right? And so there is a difference in terms of the outcomes that people have coming out of these programs. And that's not to say that there aren't people from UBC who land really cool things in consulting and investment banking, because there are. But on average, you're less likely to do that if we're talking about just average outcomes here, which we are.
这段我讲过，你们大
Wonderful.
就是你们要知道，像他说的 Ernest 一样，他就去安省就去3个学校招生，Ivy 多大和 Queens。如果你去其他学校没机会，你连机会都没有，你看都看不见你。所以为什么选学校选学校？尤其在 business program，但其他 program 也是一样的。就是你要知道这些学校，他们其实是代表不同的机会，本身大学给你带来的机会不一样啊，这个我都讲过了，我不再重复。皇后多大和西安大学。
You can see this list here, actually, if you look up. It's right here. 就在这儿的。And so in Canada, our top two ones that you would want to go to would be Ivy at Western or Commerce at Queen's. Both of these are really good programs. They'll take you to the same places. Now, Ivy students and Queen's students, we argue like for days and days and days as to like which one is better. But I think, honestly speaking, they're both really, really good. I think McGill is a solid third, right? They have a great program as well. You can do some really cool things coming up there. You've got your semi-targets. That's this kind of like layer of schools down here where they have good programs and you have good opportunities overall, but they might be stronger, like they might not be consistent across the board, for example. And so let's say like Laurier, I actually think they do pretty well in consulting, but they don't do that well in investment banking. Waterloo doesn't do so well in consulting, but because Waterloo has a really good math and accounting program, they do really well in finance. U of T does well because of Rotman there. And they're very good for international business because they have the U of T brand name. UBC is great if you want to work on the West Coast. Schulich does really well for accounting, right? And so each of these schools has a specialty, but they're not as across the board as strong as, say, your Ivy or Queens or even McGill, right? Kind of same thing for Western's business program, Western BMOS, Alberta, Calgary, McMaster. Like, you know, they're still good programs, but maybe not quite as strong all across the board. And then once we start getting closer to the bottom, or like not the bottom per se, but like the rest of the schools, right? At that point, I honestly don't think it matters all that much, right? Because your employers aren't going to be hiring you for reputation at that point. They're hiring you because they like you as a person, they like you as a student. And so I think once you get out of this top, like kind of grouping of schools here, it doesn't matter so much where you go to. At that point, you could go anywhere and just work really, really hard and you'll probably get similar outcomes. But even then, like, for example, TMU, the old Ryerson, you know, they do well in accounting. Brock does well in accounting too. Some schools have spikes in some areas.
就不需要翻译，大家看图就可以了。
Beautiful.
谁好谁是什么？刚才我看到有一个问题啊，说多大不在第一梯队吗？Sorry， 刚才大家就是对多大还是蛮有情。我居然多大不在第一梯队第一，我觉得这里面有一些大家可能对这个行业的一些认知的一个误区了。那Eric 他这个图呢，其实更多的是说，如果你在consulting 在 banking 美国的这些大的我们刚才说的这些华尔街这些银行啊、投行啊等等这些 fund 呀等等这些，他们可能更愿意去像 Ivy 或 Queen 这种是他们的 semi target 或者 target 这种学校。那你的这种招聘也好，或者 internship 这种机会会更多一些，好吗？但不代表某一个学校就一定强过另一个学校，我们只是从这种 hiring 的这个角度来说。
多大的 MBA 非常好 ，they have a really good MBA，and 你要想在加拿大或者美国外边，你想回去中国工作，或者到Europe 去工作，那多大可能会很好，因为加拿大的学校多大是别的国家大家最知道的 ，like other people maybe they know U of T, maybe they know McGill, right? If you want to work in say China, but if you want to work in Canada or the US, then I would say this is pretty applicable. And this is the undergrad level. MBA's different deal. But we're not talking about that today. I think they're a little too young for that. So
如果你要想 想都不用想上多大啊，想都不用上多大。
Yeah.
其他大学中国不知道，什么叫 Western Ivy 也没听说过。
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So school by school discussion. I want to get a little bit into the details, but not too far into the details either, because we have to go home too. But Ivy, there's a lot here because Ivy is a very unique program. All of the other programs are actually more or less kind of like each other in most ways. Ivy is a little bit weird. And so the first thing is that Ivy is a second entry program. So when you graduate from high school, you don't actually apply to Ivy, you apply to something called Advanced Entry Opportunity, or AEO for short. I'm going to call it that because Advanced Entry Opportunity takes a long time to say. So Ivy AEO for short. That's what you apply to coming out of high school. And what that is it's basically a guarantee of a spot at Ivy, but for the first 2 years of your schooling, you need to fulfill certain conditions. And so you need to get above an 80% average. You need to do 3 extracurricular activities. That's it. It's not that hard. And so about 90% of people who get AEO will move on to Ivy. But of course, there are people who don't, right? But I've always said to the first years, if you're smart enough to get AEO, you're smart enough to make it into Ivy. But just know that it is not, you are directly getting into Ivy. You are getting AEO status, and then you are getting into Ivy in your 3rd year after 2 years of study. Now, for the AEO program that your high school children will be looking at, it's based on a 50-50 assessment of your grades and your extracurricular essays. And so your grades, the average has been ticking upwards year by year by year. When I applied with a 93, that was totally fine. I don't know if I'd be really comfortable with that today. I think you want to be in the mid-90s for Ivy. So you need to be close to perfect academically. Getting in to AEO from high school is quite competitive. The acceptance range I've heard thrown out is about 6 to 7%. So 1 in every 13, 14 people, so if my math is correct. Now at Ivy, you want AEO, okay? I mentioned that Ivy doesn't start until 3rd year. And so you can just apply to Ivy at the end of your 2nd year without AEO, but it becomes a lot harder. The average that they ask for is about the mid-80s, which is much tougher in university. You need strong extracurriculars, and you're competing against a lot of other people for the spots that are left. And so, yes, we have transfer students coming from other schools. Yes, we have students at Western who don't have AEO, but maybe realize they wanted to do business later. But it's much, much easier if you apply to it coming out of high school because it'll save you a lot of work. Now, the kind of trade-off here, I think, though, is that I actually really like this form where you do 2 years of something else and then 2 years of business, because you basically spend those first 2 years exploring other stuff that you like, right? We're paying a lot of money to go to school. And so you may as well study some of the things that you're interested in. And so for me, the logic was, if I can get the business degree and the business education in 2 years, why would I go to another school and stretch it out into 4, right? Let me spend those 2 years doing other things that interest me. And so I studied computer science classes. I took geography classes and urban planning. I took history classes. I took economics classes. I did stuff that I found cool. And then I went to Ivy and got the same business education that everyone else does in 2 years, right? And so I see that as a benefit. If you're only interested, you want to do business, then maybe you want to do a program that lets you focus on that all 4 years. But if there's other things out there in the world that you're interested in, then I think the 2+2 format is really good. And the other thing is that at Ivy, it's really easy to do a dual degree. You do, say, MedSci for year 1 and 2, Ivy 3 and 4, MedSci year 5, and you'll graduate with 2 degrees in 5 years. So the 2+2 format makes it really easy to do dual. There's also, in Ivy, in your 3rd year, you take the same classes. It's a common curriculum. In your 4th year, you get to pick your own classes. So you can really gravitate towards what interests you in the world of business. Everything at Ivy uses a method called the CASE method. So there's actually no, kind of like right now, you sit down and you listen to me talk and you watch my slides. It's, I go home, I read a case about like a real life business problem. I try to solve it first myself. And then I go to class tomorrow morning with my solution. All of my classmates do the same. And the professor basically guides us through a conversation about how we would deal with this problem. And so I learned from my classmates, I learned from the professor, and by the end of it, I have a solution that's much, much better than what you would find in the textbook, and much, much better than what I could come up with myself. And so I like the case, but I will say it's also not for everybody, because you have to be willing to take a crack at it yourself, even if you don't have all the answers. And you need to be willing to come to class and share those answers. And so a lot of our grade is based on how you share your ideas and how you participate. If that sounds like it might be a barrier for you, then maybe the case method is going to be a difficult one for you to adapt to. In summary, IB is kind of weird. We do the 2+2. No other school does that. It's a non-direct entry program. All of the other programs are direct entry. You go in and you do business for 4 years and you are in the program, right? And we do a fully case-based method of learning. We learn by dealing with real life problems. But it works, right? It's a good school. You learn a lot. And I think that honestly, like the system that we have set up, I prefer personally to what the other schools do. You might take a look and you might come down on the opposite side of that decision. And that's fine, because then the other top school that you can go to is Queen's Commerce, which is basically a really good program that does things the usual way. And so it's a direct entry program. When you're in, you're in. It's 4 years of business. You can take electives, but there's a very strong focus on business. I will say the one thing about Queens is they don't do the case-based method for the most part. It's lectures, right? You go to class, you sit there, you listen to your professor, they teach too, right? It's not quite as interactive, and it's not quite as grounded in like real business problems, right? Some interesting points about Queens, they have a really strong international exchange culture. So if foreign exposure is something big for you, the vast majority of Queens students go on exchange. So that could be something for you to consider if that's a criteria that matters to you. Queens, you need an 87 to have your application considered. Above that, they're putting a heavy focus on essays, although the higher your grades, always, always, always the higher your grades, the better.
Oh, OK，
Your turn.
IB，我快点说，我认为 IB 是最接近美国的liberal arts education。就像刚才 Eric 讲，它是2+2的program，所以前2年你可以学其他的，你可以学任何你感兴趣。那真正的商学院商科是3年级4年，当然它是2步嘛。第一步就是你先进它的 AEO，sorry， 先进它的 AEO， 然后再进IB。但多数来讲，如果你进到 AEO 了，它这个数字就90%就能进到 A。然后呢，你相对来讲，如果你从 AEO 进 IB 的时候，你的门槛会低一些。如果你不是 AEO 外面的学生的话，你进 IB 的话，你的门槛会高很多。所以当然就是说你在高中申请的时候，你尽可能要进到 A， 然后就后面 IB 就比较简单。另外一个，其实我个人我是很喜欢这个，就是我在本科的时候，像我们刚才说的，有好多东西孩子们还没有定性，年轻人没有定性。为什么一下子就4年去灌一个 business program？ 我有很多兴趣，我可以做很多其他的事情，对不对？我可以学计算机，我可以学经济，我可以学什么 chemical engineering 都可以。然后我再转去 business， 转去商学院。我自己其实蛮喜欢他这个赛道，好吗？那 Queen's Commerce 我们就不多说了。那 Queen's Commerce 它是个 direct entry， 4年就直接都是 business。然后也没有什么中间还要过渡一下，反正你进去就进去高中进就进了，高中不进就不进了这个比较简单，好吗？大家有问题，我看到很多问题我们等到最后好不好？我们把我们的 presentation 做完之后，然后最后会把每一个问题我们都来看一下 ，OK？
I will just say Queens is just as hard to get into, right? Like you need really good grades, you need really good essays, and the acceptance rate again. 6-7%. It's very low. And so I think Queens and IB, both your top programs, it just kind of depends on what experience you want, right? What do you want to get out of your 4 years? What do you prefer? Okay. All the other programs on the left there, U of T, Schulich, Waterloo Laurier, UBC, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to give them your marks, and you're also going to need to do some writing. You're going to need to write some essays explaining your kind of like personal journey, what you want to get out of it. your philosophy on life, all that fun stuff. McGill, Mac, Western, Alberta, Calgary, they actually just look at your marks. And so if you don't want to, you don't even need to do any writing. You can just apply off the basis of your marks. But generally speaking, the rule of thumb is that the more competitive a program is, the more of a focus there is on the supplementals and the less room for error there is on those. Okay. The reason why that I think the slightly better programs there, along with your Queens and Ivy, require those essays is because you have thousands of people applying who have great marks. You need something to separate all of those thousands of people. And so you start to ask them, what have you done to lead in your community? What have you done to lead in your school? What kinds of other talents do you have? Can you show us that you're somebody who has a ton of growth potential? And the way that that's best done is through these sorts of extracurriculars, through things like DECA, through debate, through Model UN, through basically anything you want, honestly, but you just want to be showing, I'm a leader, I've got a lot of potential, I've already had an impact, right? Here's why I deserve to be let in over somebody else who has, say, the same 96 average. And so a few quick bullet points on each of these schools. Like Schulich is a great school for accounting. I said earlier, U of T is awesome if you want to work outside of Canada and the US because of the international brand. UBC is really good for jobs in Western Canada. Waterloo is very good for quantitative finance, as well as if you want to do combination of tech and business because of their CS and software engineering programs. And U of Calgary and Alberta are great for jobs based in Western Canada, and if you want to work in oil and gas specifically. I get a lot of questions sometimes about co-ops. Does co-op matter? And my answer to you is only a little, okay? There are definitely pros to doing a co-op program. For example, doing a co-op program will force your son or daughter to work. At Ivy, I don't get in trouble if I don't work in the summer, right? At Waterloo, if you don't work the number of co-op terms they require you to do, you don't graduate. So going into co-op will force your son or daughter to work. The school has a portal and they will help them with that. But that's not an advantage that's unique to co-op. Ivy has a career portal, Queens has a career portal. All of these schools have their recruiting assistants. So that's not actually unique to co-op. I would say the only two real benefits of it is number one, your son or daughter is forced to work during the co-op terms. And number two, you can work during off-cycle time. And so all of these other schools, we go to school during the year and we work in the summer. Everyone's working at the same time. We compete against each other for the jobs, right? The Waterloo kids, the Laurier kids doing co-op, they're on a bit of a different schedule. They might go to school in the summer and then work in the winter. And so there's a lot less competition for those jobs. There's less opportunities available too, just because some companies don't need winter interns and stuff, but there's a lot less competition because it's only a few schools that let you work during the winter. If I wanted to work during this winter, I would have to take a year off for mine because Ivy runs September to April and you're off from May to August, and that is the only way you can do it. So the two big benefits of co-op are number one, you have to work. Number two, you can work during different times than everyone else. But other than that, you can do just fine without a co-op there. Like Queens, Ivy, McGill, your top programs, none of them actually have co-op. They don't do it, right? But the students there use their smarts, they use the brand name, and they find opportunities for themselves. So you can just do that. You don't need a co-op program to force you to do it.
你看这个词关键词，你们知道这是什么意思 ？supplement 不知道就说了，都知道什么意思？不知道啊，这就是在大学申请除了提交大学成绩之外，这些学校还要求你做一个补充申请。补充申请里面最重要的是申请文书然后当然还有一些其他的一些表格你需要。你的课外活动、竞赛成绩，有没有几倍的拿过奖？有没有数学竞赛拿过奖等等这个就是叫补充申请，补充supplement。这些学校是需要 supplement 那是这些是不需要。通常来讲呢，就是说越竞争越激烈的都需要supplement所以说像这个Western IB这些没有写完出来。
That was on the previous page. 上个月上。
这些都需要很好吗？那另外一个就是 Eric 说 co-op，是不是一定是必须的？co-op 当然不是必须的，co-op 它有它的好处，刚才 Eric 讲，但 co-op 有它的缺点，就是说它会花更多的时间，因为它除了学习之外，它有专门要预留出来的时间，你要去实习。麻烦你有那个门不有关系？对，对，他还要预留时间学习，所以实际上你的本科的时间会更长。但是你不是考 op 没有问题你需要刚才我们也讲，你需要尽早的去做 internship，就像Eric 这个，你的暑期要去做 internship，好吗？
Okay, good. So to summarize, any school you need good grades, English, math, usually calculus or advanced functions, that's going to be a requirement across all of the programs. Most of your competitive programs need you to write essays and have extracurriculars. The more competitive programs, you have less room for error on your grades. It also has a greater focus on supplementals and leadership experiences to kind of like cull the pool, right? And help distinguish between different applicants. How do you do your research, right? Because obviously you're not going to make your decision off of what I've told you in 30 minutes, right? So how do you choose a program? Speak to some current students of the program. You can go on LinkedIn and use that as a tool. Look at the companies that you want to work at. Maybe your dream is to work at Goldman Sachs, right? It's not my dream, but it is yours. Your dream is to work at Goldman Sachs. Go there and look at everyone from Canada who works at Goldman and see what schools did they come from, because especially the entry level ones that are new, right? Because that's probably your answer as to where people are getting into Goldman, right? Likewise, you can do it the other way. Go to a school that you're interested in on LinkedIn. Look up like Ivy Business School on LinkedIn and see where Ivy graduates go. What are the companies that they're ending up at? What are the job functions that they're doing? Are they primarily accountants, consultants, bankers? Are they primarily working at random companies that we've never heard of before, or the big names, right? You can go check this out for yourself and see it yourself. You can search up ABC School Employment Report 2023, and a lot of these schools publish reports summarizing the information. Now, what you'll realize is some of the programs will hide the information that doesn't look good for them. So if their salary numbers are low, they simply won't give them. So just keep that in mind. But you can find these reports that will give you a little bit of information there. And you can also find the admissions requirements really easily. Just search, say, Western Ivy Business admission requirements, Queen's Commerce admission requirements. And that will let you know roughly what you need to kind of aim towards in order to get.
Yeah. 这个地方就是大家都知道，加拿大学校还是非常它的 admission 的 decision， 就是我们所谓的录取的大学的录取的决定，基本上是80%甚至以上是在你的平均分上，就是你的在校的平均分啊。那有一些学校，刚才我们看到McGill的学校100%是在你的分数。那有相当多的学校，尤其是一些头部的学校。所谓头部学校，就竞争特别激烈，越竞争越激烈的一些学校，基本上都是要你的辅助申请，就是我们刚才说的3分。那辅助申请里面非常重要的就是你的 essay， 就我们叫文书写作，这你叫文书写作。那现在这个季节，现在是9月底，差不多。这个季节其实是我们最忙，我们是有大量的，就现在是申请季节，不管是美国还是加拿大还是什么私立中学，现在都是申请季。所以我们现在在帮很多学生在改文书那 Eric 现在也在帮我们去做这个文书的工作。我们有一些他的文书都非常 Eric 的大学申请 ，by the way， 他的大学当时他本科申请的时候，我现在认为他是我的所有学生当中那个文书写的最棒，非常有意思。我读完之后，我都我觉得这文书写的简直是我都很亢奋，让我都很鼓舞。有机会他再给你分享。那当然，他也在帮我们做帮助，就是这个学弟弟妹妹们去改这个文书，所以就文书非常重要那在很大一个时候，如果你有很好的文书，或者你有很好的这种 extracurricular 就我们叫课外 课外部分，比如竞赛呀、这种学校的这种 leadership 好，它可以帮助你去纠正，或者说给你更多的机会。假设你的平均分没有那么高，它会帮助你提高你的机会，好吗？那如果你没有这些东西的话，你没有到95分，那你没有希望，没有希望。我们大概现在这些
像 IB
这些非常头部的学校，大概都是
McGill 还真的就得95，
都是这个95你的必须能进去。所以你需要，如果你需要一个很好的文书，需要一些竞赛成绩，需要一些学校的这种各种各样的 leadership 可以辅助，好吗？
像我今年我小弟弟他报的是个94，他 IB Queens Robin 这么进了 Waterloo Baccalaureate，挺好的 program，他最后去 Waterloo 做他们的 financial management，可是94已经非常高了。
别听郭总的，听我们的。郭总不告诉您真话，别听他的。
Okay, we're more than halfway, don't worry. I'll go fast. So a little bit more now about what you can do. I've given you a lot of information about these programs. What do you do about that, right? 你们能干嘛？想上这些学校，你们能干嘛？我先说一下我自己的这个 journey 吧。So I went to school in Oakville. I did the IB program. I did French immersion. I wasn't too bad in grade 9 or grade 10. I had like a mid-80s average. I used to argue with my parents because I was like, oh, that's more than enough. And my mom was like, no, it's not. And turned out she was right. So I had a little bit of difficulty sometimes with organization and taking my work seriously. And I think that was the result of that, right? But, I started the IB program. I think I also just got older and, grew as a teenage boy. And so I finished 12th grade with a 96 average. So it definitely is worth the time and worth the effort. Other stuff I did academically, I got a 1550 on the SAT, and I finished the IB with 42 out of 45, if you guys are familiar with how that grading scale works. So, yeah. Is there anything that... Yeah, got that.
看书都有。
Sure.
有没有？
No, I'm good. Thank you. No, Henry, it's for you. I can't take it. I've been drinking the water. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Okay, thank you. What I did extracurricular was I was a figure skater. That was a big time commitment, 15, 20 hours a week. But I was nationally ranked. I was about top 20 in Canada by the end of high school. I went to nationals. I went to the Ontario Winter Games. That was like my big spike. We'll talk about that in a second. I did DECA. And so I was the vice president of the largest chapter in Canada at White Oaks. We had about 400 people. And every single year I got to make sure all of them paid and handed in their forms. And it was like, probably like running around the building for like hours a week, but it was really fun. I made it to internationals in my 12th grade year, but it got canceled due to COVID. For debate, I debated with both Link Key. So as Henry was saying earlier, I stopped debating with White Oaks once I joined here at Link Key because honestly, Link Key has a better team now at this point than any other school in the province if you want to do debate. I placed at tournaments at Harvard, McGill, Waterloo, Western, so on and so forth. So kind of did my round on that debate circuit. And I volunteered. So I was involved at a hospital. I spent some time in a children's hospital when I was in grade 11. So I ended up volunteering there after I got out. I was involved in just teaching little kids how to skate, and I worked part-time at a rink. That was kind of my first ever job where I got a paycheck. So it was like $15 an hour.
OK，我就多说一句了，这个大家都看到了，Eric 他的 extracurricular 课外部分，他在高中的时候，其实他做很多事那我们现在跟大家讲的 debate 也好，或者单看，不是因为我们搞这些 program， 我们就鼓励大家。
I can tell you, I have not talked with Henry at all. He's seeing this slide for the first time. Yeah. But honestly, the stuff that they do here is really, really helpful.
因为他可以跟你很方法。你看debate，你看像他的这种 interview，他的这种 interpersonal skills，像 DECA，你真的是要想去读商科，想进 IB，你如果在高中没有 连呆卡你都没有做过的话，那个招生官会觉得你为什么实行我？你为什么高中的时候连呆卡都没有去试？所以这些东西你要去做，你要去做。而且你在高中做，就像我刚才讲的，是你成本最低的事儿。你越往后，你的成本，你的那个转向的成本，好不好？
And honestly, if you think about it this way, if you want to prove to a university that you're smart, what better way to do it than to go up against other kids and debate super complicated ideas against them, right? It's a battle of wits debate at the end of the day. It's a battle of intelligence, right? If you want to prove to them that you can be good at business, what better way to do it than to participate in DECA and beat a bunch of other people and go to internationals for a business competition, right? These sorts of things are what's going to help set you apart from like the thousands of kids in Ontario that have like 95 average in any given year, right? Okay, so I got into out of all the programs I was talking about, I got into Ivy, I got into Queens, I got into Rotman, Mac, Waterloo, and I also got waitlisted at the University of Chicago. I tried applying to the US. The fact that I needed them to pay me about $80,000 a year to go USD, full aid probably did not help, but I got waitlisted. So, I'm speaking, I suppose, from my personal experience here when I give you the advice in the next 5 or 6 slides. And so I think the first thing that you really want to do is you want to think to yourself, where do you want to end up, right? What do you want to do? How far do you want to go? Where do you want to end up? If you're aiming for like one of this like semi-target programs, like let's say you really want to stay at home is Hamilton for you, and you want to go to McMaster, right? Then don't stress yourself out, because all of those programs, they just look at your marks. And so you make sure that you have the 87 or the 88 or whatever it is to get into this Master of Commerce nowadays. You make sure you have that mark, you're pretty much it, right? McGill Commerce is the same. You just search up the admissions averages, you can probably get into the program. Now, I still think you should try to involve yourself in some stuff outside of school. It helps you grow, and it's also going to build a foundation that you can build on when you get to university. But that's your choice. Strictly admissions speaking, for these kinds of programs, really all you would need is the average. But if you want one of the stronger kind of semi-targets, you want to go to U of T, as one of our parents was saying earlier, right? You want to go to Queens, go to Ivy, right? The extracurriculars are a really good way to strengthen your application. So Henry was talking about this earlier. But let's say you have a 90 and you have some really good leadership activities, they might take you over somebody who has a 95 but has done nothing but study, right? Because you show that my marks are good. My marks are good enough to clear the bar. And I've actually been doing something out there in the real world. I've been doing something compared with other people my age, right? And of course, for the most competitive programs, the extracurriculars are kind of the way to cull the field, right? There's too many good people that are applying. And so you need something to help separate all of those people. So we start looking at what they've done before in the past, right? I think if you take the advice that I give you in the next 5 slides, pretty good chance at Ivy and Queens, and like a really good one at your programs like Rotman, Waterloo, Laurier, stuff like that.
艾瑞说，艾瑞说，他今天的建议基本上，如果你听的话，你大概率将来可以进Queen's Commerce 和就是这几个 Rotman， 所以后面注意啊，注意听讲，精华的最后，精华的。但是想说就是说，如果有2个学生，一个学生他平均分90分，但是他有很多课外的这种竞赛的成绩或课外的活动。另外一个学生95分，但是没有课外，一定是第一个学生被录取的概率要大得多，因为大学的招生办他们非常清楚，就是那个5分是很容易做到，而你真正在课外部分，你说我呆卡能赢一个奖，我debate能赢一个奖，那是很难做的，那个是更加能够展现你的竞争力，更能展现你的整体的综合的实力，好吧？所以如果你真的是说想让你自己将来有更多的机会，可以在这些竞争当中脱颖而出。除了你的课内，当然你课内部分不能差，你课内部分你说我考62分，那你就影响。你课内部分不能差，但是你一定要在课外要把你自己变得更加的强壮，更加的有竞争力。
So much better than I could have said. And so I've kind of tried to break down my personal advice based on how old your child that you're thinking of as you sit here right now is, because the advice varies based on how old they are, right? And so if there's anyone in the audience who's in elementary school or in ninth grade, I don't think this is a year to kill yourself, right? Like you want to think about like what high school, what program you're going to do. And so, for example, if in your community there's an IB program, there's an AP program, that's something that's going to let you distinguish yourself because it lets you show that you're willing to take that extra step academically, that you want to go above and beyond and seek out that challenge, right? But you obviously want to choose something that's appropriate for you too. So if there's like, if you feel like you have doubts about maybe your ability to do well in this program, or you feel like your child maybe needs a bit more, you know, growth in their organizational skills and their maturity, because I think I definitely did when I was in ninth grade, then doing well in the regular Ontario program, that can be just fine too, right? But do consider this option to go above and beyond if it's available to you and you feel like you're well suited for it. Grade 9 is a year of discovery. And so I want to say, I think to our ninth graders here, you don't need to know what you want to do. That's a lot of pressure. You don't need to know at all. But what you do need to do is you need to get out there and try some stuff. And so sign up for a bunch of different things. Like try a semester of debate. If you hate it, you've lost, you know, I don't know, like 15 hours of your time. Who gives a shit, right? Sign up for DECA. If you hate it, regionals are over in November. You can carry on with your life, right? Try these sorts of different things. Figure out which extracurriculars you like, what sorts of activities maybe speak to you a little bit more, right? And by the end of the year, try to draft up maybe a list of like 2 or 3 things that you like, that you want to put effort towards, and that you could maybe be good at, right? Maybe you've got like a bit of a natural talent in this area. And definitely consider exploring your interest in business as you do this. Try DECA. Try some kind of like investing competition, right? See if you're good at it. See if you like it at all. If there's something that you think you could be really good at, once you find that thing, focus down, right? We're going to talk about that on the next slide. This is kind of a carryover, but like what I said on the previous slide, know what you want, right? Like if you want to go to an Ivy League versus if you're okay with doing like the accounting program at your local college, then the amount of work that you're going to need to put in the next 4 years is going to be vastly different, right? You don't need to work like a Harvard grad if you just want to go to like your accounting program at your local college, right? Go hang out with your friends, you know, go do teenager stuff, save yourself the ball, right? So make sure you know deep down inside what it is that you want, what it is that you're aiming for, so that you can work the right amount to get there, right? And finally, like change is hard, right? You're going from elementary school to high school. It's a massive step in your life. So again, like a lot of the advice I'm doing here, I've given you here for like at least the ninth graders, I think is like just super chill, like dabble around, try some new shit, no pressure, right? Like it's a stressful year already with the transition to school. And so I would say also don't forget to like make some friends, do some social stuff, and make sure you're not like a loner for all 4 years at high school, right? Like change is tough. Don't kill yourself this year. But the one thing that you do need to do is you need to start putting yourself out there if you haven't yet. Okay. And so that starts with maybe signing up for a debate class. That starts with maybe saying, I'm going to try my school's DECA club, or I'm going to give Model UN a spin. It's something I've always thought is kind of interesting, right? Just say yes to it and see what happens.
这个9年级的建议，其实我觉得就一开始我们说的，你要多做一些尝试，要有一个至少有一个比较开放的心态，说，哎，我要试，我想要去尝试一下。你不一定需要你喜欢，我经常跟我自己的小孩，原来是小的时候吃东西不喜欢吃东西，那时候我跟他有一个协议，就是说吃一口，吃一口就好，不喜欢吐掉没问题，但是要尝试。不要，吃一口可以吐掉，没问题，允许你吐。喜欢你继续吃，不喜欢换一个就好。但是要保持一个开放的心态，至少我觉得是尝试。我们很多孩子，哎呀，我做这个，试试吧，可能你就喜欢，是不是？难道只有打游戏是世界上唯一的有乐趣的事情吗？不是，很多事情没打游戏。你说跟我聊天打游戏， 开玩笑。那很多很多东西其实你可以做，包括我们灵皮都开很多很多这些课程，包括debate、DICA，刚才我们讲 Model POSA、Model UN，你都可以来尝试。因为我们在 North Shop 都在开 DICA 的 in person，为什么我要把那些老师千方百计的把他们请到北约克这个地方，一定要开 in person，为什么不开线上？就是体验感，就是体验感。就跟你要去烤一个羊肉串儿，你说我烤完之后打个包1个小时送到对方的家里，那个味道就变了。一定要在现场吃，现烤出来它才好吃，对不对？所以你 in person 的体验跟 online 啊，对吧？他们就要多做这方面的尝试。
And so to like also to like our ninth graders in the audience, it's kind of like, what do you have to lose, right? Like for me, like, you know, you try debate class, maybe you hate it, you think it's the most boring thing in the world. In 10 weeks, it's over anyways, right? You don't have to go back. No one's making you go back, right? That was how I got into skating when I started. I wanted to be a hockey player, and I was out there on the ice, and I was doing my little, you know, my little exercises. And my coach, who coached me for 15 years or so, right, saw me, and she's like, Eric, I think you would make a good figure skater. Do you want to be a figure skater? And I was like, I don't care. Sure. And so I did it. And a month turned into a year, and a year turned into 5. And then I went to provincials and then to nationals, and now I'm on varsity, right? So say yes to things. You never know what good will come of it. Worst case, you can always quit, right? 10th grade, 11th grade, kind of that middle portion of high school. So really important is you want to start getting your marks up, right? In 9th grade, honestly, what the kids say to each other is true. You're 65, doesn't matter, you know? I think I got like, in 10th grade, I got like a 7 or like careers class. And my mother was like crazy angry. She's like, how do you get a 70 in the careers class? It's like the easiest class in the world, right? She went ballistic. But it is true that it doesn't matter that much early on, but what it does matter is that you have the good study habits and that you've worked your way up so that by the time you get to grade 11, you've got your marks where you want to be, right? So let's say you're applying to Ivy and you want that 96 to make your application look really good. By grade 11, you want to be pretty close to that, right? Because if you're pretty close to that, it means you have the habits, you have the routines, you've already built up the foundational knowledge. And so going into grade 12 is going to be super easy for you, just like that. And you can focus on your applications. Stick with your extracurriculars, right? Now, I never want anybody to do something they don't like. But if you can minimize it now in grade 10, grade 11, minimize the amount of like jumping around you do, right? Elementary school, 9th grade, that's your time to jump around and try random shit. This is your time to start getting good at things. Because what's going to lead to the results that you want is sustained commitment, right? Going to skating practice every morning, day after day after day after day for years is what's going to make you good eventually. Same with any club, same with any activity, right? It can take, for example, even just talking about clubs at school, it can take you 2-3 years for you to eventually become like president of that club. And so what does that mean? It means you have to stick to it and you have to work your way up. Definitely keep exploring your interest in business as well as you do this. Now, in terms of like what activities you choose, right? One kind of way that I've heard about it is that you can either try to be like solidly well-rounded, or you can aim to build out spikes, right? So this kind of like depends on what you're good at. If you're well-rounded, somebody who's good at everything, maybe you're volunteering a lot, you're leading a club, you've got great marks, you're kind of good at everything, right? But if you have like a specific talent, like let's say like I mean, the example here that I've got on the far right is somebody who's got like a massive spike in like science, right? Like they've worked an internship in a lab, they've co-published a paper with a university researcher, they made it to like the World International Science and Engineering Fair, they're in the US Physics Olympiad team, right? Probably if this person applies for like a physics program and they have an 80 in English, no one is going to give a shit, right? Because they're so good at science and they have that massive spike there that no one really cares how good they are at it, right? And so you kind of decide what approach works best for you, right? If you feel like your kid has like a crazy talent in some sort of field, encourage them to kind of like nurture that talent, right? They love it. It's what they're good at. Build up a huge spike there. right? And if they maybe don't have something that they're like insanely talented at, that encourage them to like explore around and get good and excel in like all areas, right? Both of these approaches are valid. Both of these approaches will take you really, really far to some good schools. It depends on like the individual that we're talking about and where their skills
spike，大家知道 spike 有长板，去想办法去建设你的那就是我们有每年大量的这种申请，大家说现在申请越来越难，现在越来越卷，那是什么原因造成？就因为申请。你怎么能够让你自己在众多的这种申请当中能够脱颖而出？你怎么能让你自己不被淹没在这些申请的这种海洋当中？你需要一个场，能够让招生官看到你的时候，立刻让你把你记住。哇，这个学生赢世界 figure skating 冠军，那都立刻就记住。你就在这里面一下子就脱颖。所以这也同样的道理，像你刚才跟大家说，你都95分，大家都90，没有区别。但是如果你有一个很好的一个竞赛成绩 ，extracurricular leadership， 你就可以脱颖而出。这个是实际上是你的一些竞争的一些策略。我们自己在给我们自己高中，给我们自己的小孩做一些高中的一些时间的规划的时候，就是每天我们大家最公平的一件事情，就是大家都只有24小时。你怎么去用你这个时间，怎么去规划你这个时间，这个时候是体现你的策略和你的智慧的时候。
Yeah. I want to also offer a disclaimer. I didn't come up with this idea myself. This metaphor of the spiking ball that I have here actually took from this article. If you Google search how to get into Harvard and the Ivy League prep scholar, there's a very long article. It's really long. Like it'll probably take you an hour to read it, but it basically goes far, far in depth as like what we've just like briefly explained to you here. You'll have the slides afterwards. I just want to be clear that this wasn't like my personal, I didn't come up with this out of nowhere. I'm not like a genius. I'm not some like super genius. Okay. 12th graders, home stretch, right? You guys are basically here. Your marks need to be perfect here. This is the time to push yourself, right? If you're like just a few percent off from the minimum cutoff for a program, see if you can try and make it. You might thank yourself a lot one day. It might make a difference you working just that little bit harder in 12th grade, right? My little brother and I used to give him kind of like talks when we would go for drives in the car at night. And I would tell him like when he was in 12th grade, like just work as hard as you can this year. Like that extra 1 or 2% is going to make a difference in 12th grade. It could be the difference between you getting into the program that you want and not. You're going to thank yourself one day, right? You should also like at this point, if you've taken my advice, maybe you're a leader in some kind of club, lead with confidence, right? Like your hard work pays off. You're probably doing some really cool stuff. So be confident doing that. Keep doing it, right? Embrace it. And then finally, essays. They really, really matter, okay? Like this is probably one of the most important essays you're ever going to write. You can think of it as like, I'm going to take the last 18 years of my life and boil it down into 300 words. So make those 300 words really good words, right? You want them to be the best 300 words you've ever written in your life. So, so start early, get your friends to review it. Make sure that you're investing the time and the energy, and please, for the love of God, do them, okay? Like some schools will say that they're optional, but as long as you've done anything, unless you've literally spent like the last 4 years of your life just like sitting around every day after school, as long as you've done anything, like it is in your best interest to let them know that. So take the hour out of your evening, write 250 really good words, get it reviewed by your friends, and make sure all the grammar is great, and then submit it. Some essay writing tips, and we're gonna like kind of go through this a little bit quickly because I think this is really only relevant to the 12th graders here. If you're in 9th grade, you're like way too far out to be thinking about this. Oftentimes, storytelling is the best way to communicate ideas in a university essay. So we want to show people the message, not tell it to them directly, right? If I tell you, I worked really hard as a skater, you'll probably not, right? You have no reason not to believe me. But it's probably more convincing if I tell you, every day I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I would eat my breakfast, drive down to the rink with my mom, and I'd be on the ice by 6. I would finish at 7:30. I would take a 15-minute nap in the car, and I would start my class at 7:15. I would stay the entire day at school, 3:15, back on the highway, back to the skating center, 3:30 to 5:30 practice, go home, eat dinner, do my homework, and sleep. That was my routine for 4 years, right? I tell you that, and you go, wow, he worked really, really hard. It's much better if I let you come to that conclusion yourself, right? It's much more convincing. And so show them the message. Don't just tell it to them and shove it in their face, right? Now, just in case the person who's reading your essay is really, really stupid, you can summarize it at the end, right? You tell them that story and then you go, my 4 years in figure skating taught me the importance of hard work. I can summarize it at the end. But it's much, much better if I let you figure that out yourself, right? Focus on the impact. Focus on what you've learned. Universities know that we're still growing, right? They also like to see that we've had an impact. And so talking about personal growth, talking about the tangible results that you've been able to make, that's always going to be a great strategy for you to do on your essays. Be personal, be genuine, okay? And like, it's just write what you genuinely believe, not what you think they want, okay? You're going to have an essay that feels more like you. It's better to get rejected being yourself than to get rejected pretending to be someone else, right? That just like makes it worse. And I think the best way to go about doing this is just to start early by trying different things and figuring out what you like, right? If you really, really love the things that you've done for the last 4 years, you're going to have the easiest time being genuine about it, right? Like when I was in 9th grade, I didn't do anything because I was like, oh, I want to get into Harvard. I actually didn't even think about the idea of applying to Harvard until Henry suggested it in my summer before 12th grade, right? Or American schools, right? Or even like really good Canadian programs. In 9th grade, I think I did our mandatory landscaping class and I decided I wanted to be a landscaper. And my mother was like, no, you have to go to university. So, you know, it was like, I was never doing this stuff for the resume, right? I did it because I had fun and I liked it and it was challenging. It was helping me grow. Find stuff like that for you and you're going to have such an easy time writing essays. You're probably also going to get multiple, right? So don't write all of your essays on the same thing. Use them strategically to build a picture about yourself, right? Talk about your skating, talk about DECA, talk about your family, and let the admissions committee see this nice picture of who you are as a person over the course of the 3 or 4 essays that they're going to let you write. A few really quick tips. Please use your words. You only have like 300, 400. It's not that much. Use all of them, please. What can you offer to the school, right? Like definitely reflect on your past experiences, but also think about the future and what you can bring to the university as you get there. And for the love of God, like get someone to look over your grammar. Don't send in an essay with a bunch of grammatical errors.
All right. essay，我这次讲了半天在讲 essay，我不知道你们，我上一个讲座的时候，其实我给大家坐在这儿，我给大家展示了几个那个sample，我给大家举了几个例子，那都是真实的，都是我们改的。我当时给大家看，我说你看改之前是这样，改之后的，改之前是这样，改之后呢，你看着哇，确实是不一样，能有非常大的差。那 essay 为什么 Eric 在不停的在讲这个东西？其实我们也在不停的在告诉大家，但很多人都觉得想卖我英文课，其实就是它是唯一的一个机会，唯一的一个窗口，去展现你自己，就是你是一个什么样子。其他所有的东西在你的大学申请当中都是那些 cold numbers， 都是那些冷冰冰的数字，95分、1550、42分，都是冷冰冰的数字。只有 essay 是唯一的一个机会，你能展现你是个什么样的，就像一幅画。这幅画我如果拿这个说拿数字给你描，我不知道怎么描这幅画啊，里面有图块或者数字之类的，描绘不出来。但是你看到这幅画，你有一个特别直观，马上你这个场景这个感觉就出来。essay 不让得到，你需要通过你的这篇 essay 让大家知道，让你的招生官知道你是一个什么样的人，你是一个有温度的人，你是一个什么样的一个个性，你是一个什么样的性格。 你将来来到这个大学之后，你能给我这个校园带来什么样的贡献？这个是你唯一的一个机会，能够展现你自己。那你展现你自己，你需要技巧，你需要技巧，好吗？就大家现在平常要在这些地方，你们稍微低一点年龄的时候，要在写作方面要注意，要注意，因为所有的这些东西，最后不仅是写作，你的口头表达，因为你要通过面试，这个是你对外展现你自己的窗口。语言这个东西，英文这个东西，中文一样的道理，是你对外展现、对外沟通的窗口。所以，如果没有这个窗口，别人不知道到底你有多强，你有多么 outstanding，多么与众不同，好吗？
Yeah.
OK，
It's pretty hard because at the end of the day, if you think about it, you've got 300 words. You need to convince this person who has no clue who you are. Like they've never met you before. You're just a name on a page. You need to convince them that you're, a friendly person, hardworking, smart, you're interesting, you've grown a lot in the last 4 years. That's a lot riding on those 300 words. So the more time you spend on it, the more help you get, the better. So I'm not going to go over this. This would take a very long time. But I've provided like a few samples. I think this was maybe my application to the master program or something like that. I picked these because they were short and they could fit on a slide. I've provided a few samples of some essays that I wrote, some of the writing that I did to give people kind of that idea of who I was, a little bit of color about me. And once again, I've like summarized these massive parts of my life into 1,500 characters, right? Like this story is, I think this one is about someone you admire. And I wrote about my parents, right? They immigrated to Canada with a few $1,000s and a few bags of luggage, right? They worked very hard to set like a foundation for me. And so if I have the same kind of self-control that they did when they were saving up for the house, or if I have the same kind of perseverance that my dad did, he was working those long hours, or if I have the same kind of dedication that they put into me when they were raising, then I'm going to be able to take that really, really far into my own future, right? And that's kind of the message of this essay. And so it's taking a lot and it's boiling it down into a little 300-word, paragraph. It's not an easy thing to do. Some very general advice for life. Start early. Like there's a lot of work that you'd expect with the application process. So like, for example, getting a recommendation is surprisingly time consuming and slow. So start early if you can, save yourself a bother. Do what you like. Like extracurriculars are important, but it shouldn't be a chore, right? There's a lot of people that have gotten to Harvard by patting the shit out of their resumes and just doing a million things that they don't care about. But it's not going to be fun for you if you do that. So do yourself a favor and pick the things that you really enjoy and gravitate towards. And parents, if you can, let your kids experiment around a little bit so they can figure out what those things are. Remember the reward. Sometimes it's going to be hard. So remember what you're working towards, right? I thought about going to university, getting a fresh start, university parties, which are awesome, by the way. I was up at 1 o'clock last night drinking with my friends, and it was such a fun time. And then I got up at 7 o'clock today to make this deck. So life can be crazy, but a lot of fun. And now, where I am now, I think about this idea of having a satisfying career. I think about having the money to do more of what I want to do, to travel, to see more of the world, right? You always need to find yourself something to work towards to keep you motivated, right? Make some time for yourself. Try to minimize the amount of time that you lie down in bed, looking up at the ceiling on your phone. But that doesn't mean that you need to cut everything out of your life. The way I do it is I deliberately schedule in break time for me, right? Either I'm working or I'm on break. And so tonight I'm going to go home and I'm going to sit down and play some video games. And I have that in my calendar because I'm like, I am going to deliberately give myself this break so that I can relax and so that I don't burn out. But what I am not going to do is I am not going to distract myself while I'm studying by playing video games. When I'm studying, I'm studying. When I'm playing video games, I'm deliberately relaxing. And so make the time for yourself to deliberately relax and enjoy your life and get rid of your stress, to go hang out with your friends and play your video games or play your guitar or skateboarding or whatever it is that lets you blow off your stress. But do that deliberately and don't just like waste away hours of your life scrolling on TikTok like we all do sometimes. I still do it sometimes. I get up in the morning and it's hard. Finally, with your application, hand it in and forget about it. What's the point about stressing about the application after it's gone, right? Put in the work before you hand it in, and then don't think about it when it's out the door. Life lessons, 3 more of them. Balance is really important. Look for balance, right? It's what I was saying earlier, like work hard, but also like schedule in time to relax. Follow the things that call out to you most. Do what you like, and you're going to have a really, really good time. And like act with purpose, right? Like find a goal and run towards it. Easy as that. So if you want to contact me, there's my contact information. If you want to download a copy of this slide deck, you can scan that QR code and it will take you to a copy of the deck that I've shared with you. So these slides are yours to keep if you would. Or do you want to?
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. Let me go to the Q&A. So
Oh, God.
what about we do this? I will ask a question,
Okay,
and then you answer.
that's a good idea.
All right?
I can't read the questions, so.
Why not? You will be not in the first group. We talk about this.
Oh, did we get a new one?
In order to get into Western IB, what would be the minimum GPA required?
Well, I think we've covered it like 95 or so. Mid-90s.
What about IBs? What's the
Uh, If you're taking IB in Canada, they'll look at your Canadian percentage score first. So it's what matters is what it converts over to,
Okay. So 95 basically.
basically.
讲座有回放吗？讲座有回放啊。OK，好像在 IB 大3、大4的时候有一个交换生去北大的光华管理学院，你是否推荐 ？OK，他说在so when you were in IB for your junior senior year, there's an exchange program which will send you to Peking University, the management college.
Yeah, yes, there is.
Do you know that program?
Yeah, we have.
Do you recommend it?
IB has 3 exchange partners in China. You can go to Peking, you can go to Tsinghua, or you can go to Fudan.
Okay.
So that is in the 2nd semester of your 4th year. Would I recommend it? I mean, I think it kind of depends up to you, right? Like if you want that international experience, if you want to see what going to school in China is like, if you want to get that brand on your resume, absolutely, right? Like a lot of the people I've heard from, they said they went on exchange and they said it was a life-changing experience. Personally, I actually got into exchange. If you are familiar with the National University of Singapore in US, how does that translate over to?
新加坡国立大学.
Yes, that. So I got in there, but I actually ended up not going because for me, I thought, you know what? I want to, like, for me, the biggest purpose is I want the experience. I want to see what it's like. And I felt really, really kind of sad, I suppose, that I was going to cut my time short at Western Valley because I do love it there. And so I decided, you know what? Like, I'm going to enjoy my last 4 months here. And then I'm going to like, you know, use my internship money, use my own savings to like backpack the world afterwards. And I can make a stop in Singapore to see what the culture's like, right? I don't have to sink my last 4 months of school into it. And so for me, I wasn't ready to leave Western. But there's lots of people who are, and there's lots of people who want the brand name on their resume. And so if those are reasons that are maybe applicable to you, exchange is a wonderful thing. There's no wrong or right answer to it.
All right. So I think you can read this question, Eric. Why take SAT?
Good question. Thank you for yeah, making it super easy for me to read here. I mean, take the SATs if you want to go to school in the US. SATs are pretty much required for American schools. If you are only applying to Canadian schools, you do not need to take the SAT. And I think I don't even know if there's a place to submit your SAT scores in Canada. So the benefit will be minimal for Canadian schools, but it is basically required if you want to go to school in the US.
Especially if you are international students.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Now this is a pretty hard question, Eric,
Oh,
from iPhone.
iPhone, a challenge.
So
I
you
like
got a pretty awesome GPA and extracurricular. Why didn't you apply US colleges? OK，不是样子。
OK，
OK，我用中文解释跟你讲，这个不是说我们没有申请美国就说明我们不够 competitive。那实际上我知道我们有的学生被类似于耶鲁这样的学校藤校录取了，然后被 Queens 给拒。我们加拿大学校不容易啊，不是一定比美国容易。Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I did try at a very small group of American schools, but it is hard to get into the US schools when you need them to basically pay everything. US schools are very expensive. It is like, to go to school in Canada, the most expensive program in Canada, like Ivy and Queens, like $25,000 Canadian. That is a lot of money. A similar school, like you want to go do business at Harvard or something, you're paying like full ride, you're paying like, or sorry, like if you pay the whole tuition, you're paying $70,000, $80,000 USD. Translate that into Canadian and it's in the six figures. And so I sit down with some of my friends from White Oaks who went to the US for business. We're working similar jobs. They're doing consulting, they're doing investment banking, so am I. But the difference is I paid about $60,000 over 4 years in tuition to get there, and they paid about $400,000. That I think for me to consider going to a US school, it had to be number one, better than any of the schools I could find in Canada, which limited it to a very small group of competitive US schools. And number two, they had to give me basically a full ride because I wasn't going to let my parents mortgage the house so that I could go. Okay. And so that combination of things made it pretty difficult for me to have a shot in the first place. Not much luck with the American schools for me personally. That's kind of the honest take on it. But like, I don't particularly feel like my opportunities have been limited by the fact that I chose to stay in Canada. If you go to a good Canadian program like Ivy and Queens and you work hard, equally lots and lots of great pathways open to you.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Question from Ken. Sorry.
I'll go to the bathroom quickly while you translate that one.
他是说，因为有人问他说，有这么好的成绩，有这么好的课外的这些竞赛，你为什么没有申请美国大学？那他在讲就是说首先是经济的考虑。在加拿大，坦白讲，你读4年大概是6万7万加币差不多。美国如果是同样这个级别的学校，大概要40。首先经济考虑，第二美国这个就是真正能够超越，当然这是他的个人的意见，就是能够超越像 Western Ivy、像 Queens 这样的这种商科的一些课程其实学校也不多。那你要想进到这些学校，比如说像哈佛商学院、东京商学院，是很难，是很难所以这是另外一个。那如果他将来像他这种，如果通过 IB 毕业，他也有一个非常好的一个就业的前景的话，其实你有的时候要去考虑，就所谓叫性价比。我付出这么多，是不是能得到？但是坦白讲，如果你真的是能够进到像哈佛商学院或沃顿商学院的话，你将来的那个return会更高，就你将来的收获的。但是我们必须得承认，这些学校它的录取感比较高的，好吗？
还有一个如果你们申请美国的申请证，他能看到证在申请看到
什么证？你申请证？
他申请美国证的话，他看到刚才你说的那个防务大学就拒绝了。如
那你这是两套不同的申请系统，大家互相都很看不懂。美国是美国的申请系统，我们加拿大是加拿大的申请系统。
他说要到3上4，是不是要到？你可以到拿交换生是吧？
对，他有对 ，Ivy 有这个，就他们学校有这样的选项，你可以到北大去、清华去做交换生，大概是半年1个学期。如果你喜欢的话，你可以去。
可以去，那不是你交换生到3上4上，大概是2年。
对，
是不是
4年3年4年，对。
他们这有一个这个项目。
对。Okay, does Ivy program like Waterloo has called? No, Ivy does not.
But again, I don't think it matters that much because IB students work hard on their own over the summer. They get support from the school's career management office as well. And like 90% of us get jobs. So yeah, you don't need co-op to get a job.
OK，我们把这个快速过完了，然后让我们在现场呢，给你们更多的机会。哦，对，今天我们有个福利现场，王老师说，我们以后要鼓励更多大家到现场来跟我们，至少跟我们交流，能让我们看到你。经常我都看不到你，然后经常是 iPhone 问了一个问题，然后什么 Android， 那鼓励大家到现场。我们给大家所有今天到现场给大家提供一个免费的咨询跟我坐下来，你们可以问我任何问题半个小时，对，如果你们需要的话，可以跟王老师约时间，我通常我星期天会在这，好不好？任何问题你都可以问我啊。
这些问题都是英文的 so I think I can read them.
Okay,
Yeah.
go for it.
It would be a problem. What major of DECA did you do in your 12th grade? How did you get the materials and books to prepare it? So in 12th grade, I did the independent business plan event. Actually, no, that was 11th. In 12th grade, I did franchise business plan. And so basically it's like you come up with a plan to open a franchise of a business. So like a McDonald's or Tim Hortons or a Subway or any kind of franchise you want. You write up like a 15 or so page report as to like, you know, how are you going to make it happen? Why did you choose this location? How much money are you going to spend? How many customers are you hoping to have come? All of that stuff, right? Materials and books. My DECA club was quite well organized. And so I learned a lot of like the business fundamentals over the last 2 or 3 years. And then I was able to find some materials and books online. If you search around on Google, you can find some like really good past examples of like winning reports. And so obviously you can't directly copy their reports, but what you can do is you can look at these reports that have done really, really well and see what they have in common, right? And so my partner and I, we spent a lot of time researching and reading these reports. We really understood what the judges were looking for out of a successful kind of entry in this event. And then we applied that to our own. So that would be my advice for DECA. And then what double degree does IB provide? So IB does a ton of different double degrees, like social science, computer science, engineering, health sci, urban planning, law. Really, like aside from the Western business program and maybe like economics, because they're similar, you can basically do a double degree with anything else. And so the way it works is that you need 5 years to get the 2 degrees. You do year 1 and 2 at Western in whatever other thing you're doing, like say computer science. You do years 3 and 4 at IB, and then you do year 5 in computer science again. That's pretty much the way it works. Are leadership positions in business clubs like DECA or FBLA valued more than having a similar position in a more general club? I think that it can be valuable to demonstrate that you have the interest in business. Okay. Like you can say, I'm applying to this business program because I've done this business extracurricular and I've succeeded in this business extracurricular. That's really the only difference. Beyond that, I think leadership is leadership, right? Like if you know, like DECA was the one business thing I did. I did debate, I did skating. None of that was business related, but it's evidence of like, I don't know, potential or whatever you want to call it, and leadership, right? Those are things, potential, leadership, ability. You can find those anywhere. It doesn't need to be DECA, it doesn't need to be FBLA. Although I would probably encourage you, if you're thinking about doing business, to give one of those clubs a spin anyways, see if you like it, because, you know, you're going to be committing 4 years of your life to study. When is it better to submit your OEAC application if considering an early application? I mean, honestly, like, I'm pretty sure with like the really competitive programs like IB and Queens, like the applications close at like the end of January or so. They wait till they have all of them and then they read them, right? So like there's not necessarily going to be like an admissions benefit for a lot of these business programs to submitting early. But I think where the benefit is that you should get started early so that you have time to, for example, rewrite your essays again and again and again to go perfect, right? You have time to get the best recommendations possible from your teachers. You have time to get help from friends or peers or advisors or key on your essays, right? All of that stuff takes time. If you start writing your application 2 nights before it's due, then unfortunately nobody's going to be able to help with any of that. So I think it's more of a for you sort of thing. But would you agree with that? Yeah.
这些比较头部的这些专业，你早申请其实没有什么，不会给你带来任何大家好像想象当中，我先递交进去了，我就好像就被这个有优先级可以拿到，不是的啊。这些头部的专业通常他们都会等到最后，所以你看滑铁卢的计算机，它从来不会早发 offer， 他会等到最后所有的申请都进来之后再整体看完之后再去。那有很多学校有早发 offer， 但这个说这话有一点武断，但通常来讲，早发 offer 的学校基本上都是受欢迎程度比较低的。他希望早给你 offer 能把你占住。那些真正那些非常 popular 的、非常竞争很激烈的这些专业和学校，像 IB、像波特勒的 CS 这些，他不会早给你。你早提交没有用，不会说我早进去我先占个位置，没有那回事那与其那样子的话，当然你不需要等到最后一天，然后马上还有2分钟那个 deadline 你提交，你不希望等，但你也没有必要那么早，你也不希望太这种匆忙把它弄一弄给它交上去，你要希望能够把你的申请做到最完美然后把它提交上去当然你要计划做好了，不要弄得太等到最后一刻，好吗？基本上我跟 Eric 的观点不一样。
Last question. Why did you choose Ivy but not Rotman or Smith? So for context, Rotman is University of Toronto and Smith is Queens. And so I chose Ivy. First, reasons why I chose Ivy. I like the 2+2 program because I wanted, again, if I can get the business degree in 2 years, why would I do it in 4, right? I can do something else. I have lots of other things I'm interested in. And then case-based method, I like the fact that you're learning from these real-world business situations. I like the fact that you're being encouraged to participate and that you're bouncing ideas off of your colleagues and hearing those different perspectives. I learn better that way. And then finally, I think for me, I just kind of liked the school culture at Western a lot. Better than what I found at Queens. And definitely far better than what I found at UT. I think Western people are generally like pretty friendly, pretty laid back, pretty chill. In a way, when we help each other with these interviews and stuff, we're helping our competitors because we're all going for the exact same jobs. But I've never met anybody who actually thinks of it that way. You ask anyone for an interview, they'll help you out. You ask somebody for a resume, or review or something, or you want to look at their resume, they'll happily let you do that, right? Everyone kind of helps everyone else out. It's not a crazy cutthroat environment. Whereas I think I heard things from students at Queens at U of T. And obviously, this is kind of up to you to decide, so don't just take my word for it. But the environments there might have been like a little bit more competitive, a little bit more cutthroat. And in the case of U of T, like much more intense. And so for me, I was like, I don't know if I necessarily want to be put into that pressure cooker environment for 4 years. I want to be around smart people, but I want to be around nice people too. And I want to be able to have like help each other out as opposed to like always think of each other as like competitors. Right. Now, maybe why not Queens? Why not Rotman? Well, U of T, I think the biggest appeal would maybe be you get to live in Toronto, you get to go international business. None of those were big concerns for me. I didn't have any particular desire to move to the big city, nor did I really want to work outside of Canada or the US. Um, and then for Queens, I think just again, it was the idea that I didn't want to spend all 4 years doing business when I could do some other stuff too. I don't do very well in lectures where it's just the professor talks on and on and on in a very monotone voice for like 2 hours, right? I I'm not very good at sitting still either. Um, so, being able to participate a class where I get to talk as much as I want is wonderful. Um, so I think those would be some of the reasons why I ended up choosing Ivy over Queens, over U of T.
OK，我们线上的问题是这样的啊，
We did it.
如果
Yeah.
如果你们线上还有问题，你们还可以在敲到对话框里面，或者把话筒打开，你可以直接问如果你要没有问题的话，就这个我们今天基本上该讲的内容所有都讲完了，然后我们现在可以跟我们的线下的这个家长跟孩子们，我们可以说点悄悄话所以线上的你可以，如果没有问题，你就可以享受你剩下的周日的下午，好不好？
Thank you for coming, guys.
谢谢你们今天能参加我们谢谢 Eric。好，
谢谢大家来。
线上部分呢，我们就这样好吗？拜拜 ，Thank you。
再见，谢谢。
好，稍等啊，我们把线上这个给它关掉，我们就。OK，拜拜，guys。